It is Wednesday night, East Lansing, Michigan. That's supposed to be green right there, by the way, but blue is fine. Blue is a water state. It's a Great Lakes state. That's an up north coffee mug, and we're ready to go. Spartan Mag live Wednesday night, East Lansing, Michigan. My name is Jim Comparoni, publisher, SpartanMag.com. Come on in, gather around. Glad to have you once again for Spartan Mag Live. If you don't know who I am or what this nonsense is, if you like Michigan State sports, we think that you will like this program as we talk Michigan State sports. Talk about Michigan State football as they look ahead to take on Iowa Hawkeyes in Iowa City this weekend. Spartan Mag will be there covering it. Also talking about that coach watch going on in East Lansing, Michigan. Mel Tucker today fired officially as head coach. So Michigan State, as we all know, is going to be looking for a new head coach real soon. Harlan Barnett elevated from acting head coach to interim head coach today. Harlan Barnett practicing with the team throughout the week, most of the month of September, trying to make something out of this season. And he was very complimentary of Michigan State fans, as was Tom Izzo when we spoke with him earlier in the week about Michigan State fans. The way they've showed up, I mean, it's been really positive out there in the tailgating scene, the Spartan walk scene, all those things. It's been good. And like Izzo said yesterday, or on Monday actually, Spartan fans are resilient. I would have to agree with that. You've been hit in the gut before, but you keep coming back. I respect that. That's why we do our best at SpartanMag.com to provide coverage for Michigan State fans. Give us a like here at this channel, subscribe to this channel, and please consider going to SpartanMag.com and becoming a Magger. A Magger, those are the people, the subscribers. We affectionately refer to them as Maggers. They've been around a long time, since the beginning of this very internet. SpartanMag.com is a lot of fun. Coverage, in-depth coverage, Michigan State football, basketball, recruiting, and the coach watch as it develops. Right now it's a coach watch. At some point it could become a coach search. Right now it's a coach watch. Alan Haller, athletic director, in charge of it. Very quiet about things. He's going to keep things close to the vest, buttoned down. Those of us on the outside can only look at some of the potential candidates and comment on some of those potential candidates. Big Movie's going to be on the show tonight. He's going to be calling here momentarily because he's got to get in, get out. He's got things to do. Usually we keep him in the bullpen, bring him out later, but we're going to trot out Big Movie Ron Armstrong as starter today, not a closer. He'll be good in that role for sure. We're looking forward to talking to him. Over at SpartanMag.com, the Underground Bunker message board, we invite SpartanMag.com subscribers to post questions, and we field those questions here, mailbag style. We're always happy to do that. Always happy and pleased for the comments we get over there. By the way, in East Lansing today, it was Michigan State Hockey Media Day. 61 degrees, drizzly. Starting to feel like fall weather. It is fall weather. Getting toward the icy times of winter when you walk through when you park at IM West and you walk through the pine trees to go to Munn Ice Arena. It's a great setting, one of the great settings in college hockey, and it's only getting better over there with the refurbished Munn Ice Arena. Michigan State, preseason top 10, year 2 from Adam Nightingale. 15 new faces on the team this year, including a couple of European defensemen to keep an eye on. I don't know about the pronunciations on these guys, but Maxim Sturbach from Slovakia, 6'2", the other defenseman from Belarus, Artyom Levshinov. Those guys, big timers. Sturbach was drafted in the second round last spring. Also, transfer portal. Michigan State strong in that area, as you would expect. Hockey, everything going on over there. Nightingale is very much favored nation status as far as developmental aspects of the sport goes, which is important for recruiting. That's the same with his assistant coaches. Isaac Howard is a guy they brought in from a guy that used to play for Nightingale, the U.S. national developmental team. Went to Minnesota Duluth, had 6 goals coming in this year as a sophomore, and also Joey Larson from Brighton, Michigan, 13 goals last year at Northern Michigan. He was at Brighton. He was at Heartland High School. He's Mr. Hockey in the high school ranks. Prior to that, he was in the CompuWare system and USHL, but a couple years high school hockey. Did real well up at Northern Michigan. Now he's a Spartan, 15 new faces. I asked Nightingale today what's going to be the biggest thing that fans will notice difference from last year, and he said speed. Michigan State hockey. Today in the Coach Watch, Chris Kleiman, head coach Kansas State, was asked on Sirius Satellite about the Michigan State job opening, was asked about it, and he said, quote, "I'll be sticking in Manhattan, Kansas. I will not be a candidate for that job. So he's the first person on some of these hot boards that has withdrawn interest. I'm not surprised about that. When I put together my initial hot board, it's not really a hot board, but I put together a list of candidates for an article I did, I don't know, a week and a half ago. I had Kleiman on there, but I said, I'm not, I like Kleiman a lot, 51, I think 52 years old, I'm not sure, something like that. Maybe 55, I think. Liked him a lot, but, he had just signed a pretty good contract to Kansas State, $44 million contract, $5.5 million a year, and I wasn't sure, to get that guy, you'd have to pay him about $8 million, and I'm not sure Michigan State's looking to pay someone of that level $8 million. Secondly, I don't know why he would want to go to Michigan State from Kansas State. Yes, it's a step up in some ways. There's probably more players available to you at Michigan State. It's a little bit bigger time. However, it's also you can probably attract better talent at Michigan State theoretically. It's a little bit more on the map. It's Big Ten, it's big stage, all that. But at Kansas State, that schedule is going to be a lot more manageable. And with a 12-team playoff, he'll have access to the playoff just as easy, probably easier in the Big 12 staying at Kansas State than if he went to Michigan State. He can put together let's say he puts together the exact same team. A team that could go 10-2, let's say he puts together a team, Chris Kleiman. That same team, theoretically, in the years to come, I would estimate, might be able to go 10-2 in the Big 12. That same team might only go 8-4 in the Big 10. Same roster, same team, harder schedule. So I'm not surprised that he's not interested. So the Kansas State people will be happy about that. Let's go straight to the mailbag. Let's talk. Mike from Granville, Michigan says, if you had to take your money to Vegas and put it on one candidate to be the next head coach at Michigan State, who would it be? Man, that's question number one. That's a big question. My money, so you're basically asking me to bet on what Alan Haller is thinking. This is not what I'm thinking. It'd be what Alan Haller is thinking. And he's tied to the vest. He's not giving, he's going to be very tight with this. He's been through some coaching searches in other sports, and I think he's done pretty well. I think he's done really well, including Nightingale. So he's going to be following some of those similar steps. A week or so ago, I might have said Mike Elko at Duke would have been the odds-on favorite. See, now we're getting to the point of this process when these coaches, when they go on radio shows like Kleiman did today at Big 12 Radio on Sirius Satellite, they will be asked about openings. Kleiman's the first one that said, I will not be a candidate. I'm out. I'm staying in Manhattan, Kansas. Some of these others will probably start giving coach speak. Hey, I'm happy to be in Durham, North Carolina. I'm happy to be at Duke. I'm focused on my team right now. And that's what they say. He's not said it yet, but at some point, Mike Elko will be asked that. At some point, Ryan Dickert at Washington State will be asked that, as will other coaches around the country as the season progresses. So I think Elko is interesting. I think Michigan State is the first big major job opening, and he's the rising candidate among Power 5 coaches for the moment. I was talking with someone today, and he said, yeah, we'll see what he does against Notre Dame. And I said, man, I'll be more interested in what he does after Notre Dame. If he goes out and loses to Notre Dame by 10.
Call from
Big Move.
To accept, press 1. To send a voicemail.
All right, I'm going to finish my thought before we go out to Big Move, Ron Armstrong in East Lansing, Michigan. I'm going to finish my thought about Mike Elko. Big Movie, I'm fielding a question. Someone said, if I had to take my money and put it in Vegas on one candidate, who would I bet on? And I was saying like a week ago, I don't know. It's an open field. And I'm gonna say Elko would be someone that Alan Haller surely would be looking at among others. And someone said today, I want to see what happens when Elko plays against Notre Dame. I'm more interested in what he does after the Notre Dame game. You lose by 10 to Notre Dame with a Duke roster you've had for 2 years. That's a strong performance in my opinion. If you're a Michigan State guy, I'm not sure you want Duke to beat Notre Dame because then he becomes major big time. And if I'm Michigan State, that looks great for the future. But if something happens at A&M and that thing knocks loose, Michigan State would be battling A&M for Elko, among others. This is very premature. It's coach watch time. It's not coach search yet. Harlan Barnett, in all due respect, is trying to make the most out of this season. And they're going to be going to Iowa City, and you can bet Michigan State They're going to hit as hard as they can. They're going to play really hard, I think, for Harlan Barnett this week and in the weeks to come, I would think. But that's a precarious situation. Let's go out to East Lansing right now. Let's bring him in. Ron Armstrong, Big Moob, known affectionately at SpartanMag.com on the message board as Big Moob. It's great to have him here on a Wednesday night in East Lansing. Ron, how you doing?
Hey, doing great. Glad to be on, talking some ball.
All right, I had a question here. Someone asked point blank before we start talking Michigan State football. Mike in Macomb. He says, if Big Movie's going to be on Spartan Mag Live tonight, then please ask him who his top candidates are to be the next head coach at Michigan State. Would love to hear who he thinks Michigan State should go after. And I saw you posted on the Underground Bunker message board today a top 4. Do you want to address that right now? Are you comfortable with that? What do you think about that?
Yeah, sure. Yes, sure. Yes, sure. Like you said, with all due respect to Harlan, this is just, for conversation purposes, I'm not, but be that, having said that, in no particular order, I really like Leipold. I like Elko. I like Freeman at Kansas State. And I like Huff at, he would probably be 4 low on that list, but I kind of like his energy and some stuff about him. But those first 2, I think, are guys that if I were just, those are the first, my top 2 choices. For different reasons, I'd like Leipold because everywhere he's been, he's built the organization. I just posted it before. Like, my thing with that guy is he builds from the inside out. What I mean by that, he builds the structure of the program, all the organizational pieces, and then he focuses on the players. You can do that. You can go try to get players. But man, if that internal stuff is not set right, and we talk about quality control and all those things that you have to have in place, you're just going to keep having these up and down seasons. I just like that the way and winning's always he's won. He's experienced some success, so I do like his resume. Because if you can win at Duke, and not necessarily just win, but win with a requisite amount of toughness and competitiveness. You talked about beating Notre Dame. I'm not even going to really care about the score. If they win, great. It's how they play.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Not going to have light talent on the field. So I do like his resume the same. And that's what I like about his teams. They go out there and they compete their tails off. Kleiman is like a lot of the same attributes, the other 2, but I think those 2 would be my top 2, and some other guys would be on that list, but just, we talked about a wild card with Bill O'Brien. I think he's probably a short-term fix. You might have him 3 to 5 years tops. I think ultimately you'd want to, but again, the organization and the structure of the program would get better. I believe would get better under his watch, if that answers the question,
Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you heard this, but just a few hours ago, Chris Kleiman at Kansas State said that he is not going to be considered for that job. He said, quote, "I'll be sticking in Manhattan and will not be a candidate for that job," unquote. So Chris Kleiman at Kansas State is out. Sometimes coaches kind of say things and leave it a little bit wishy-washy. Didn't sound like Kleiman's leaving that one wishy-washy. Sounds like he's out, which doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, that's not exactly true. He's saying he won't be a candidate. That's not for him to decide. He can say he's not interested. Mm-hmm. Michigan State would ultimately decide if he's a candidate. So, we can have, and listen, it's easy to say that week 4.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not a candidate. That's not what, so I don't even take that stuff with, it's interesting that he would come out and say that so early.
Mm-hmm.
Which
he was asked point blank, on a talk show. So he had an answer ready, but yeah, go ahead.
So that means, the fact that we're in week 4, week 5, this weekend, and he's got rabbit ears already to that rumor.
Mm-hmm.
That speaks to what the chatter, that there's some real chatter out there that he felt like he had to address right now. Shut that down. To the end of the season. So he can always say, well, I was focused on my team. Season's over. I had a chance to talk to him. Whatever coach speak is at the end of the year when if he decides to take the job, you can always go back and at the time that's where my focus was. Blah blah blah.
Mm-hmm. Lance Leipold at Kansas, 59 years old. He's 4-0 right now. He's got a record of 4-0. It's the first time that Kansas has been 4-0 in consecutive seasons in over 100 years. Lance Leipold, 6 Division III national championships at Wisconsin Whitewater, which makes you say that Lance Leipold is the Bo Ryan of this coaching search. I don't disagree with that.
Bo Ryan.
Okay. And Leipold, I mean, with Kansas, they beat Brigham Young, and they mopped the floor with Illinois. The game was not as close as that score indicated. They looked pretty good. And last year, Kansas was 6-6, lost their bowl game, went 6-7. So I did an article at SpartanMag.com, did a study looking at coaches with a 500 record or better and categorizing them. Well, technically, Lance Leipold was not 500 or better last year. However, this year, 4-0 already, manageable schedule. He's 59 years old. I mean, insiders in the sport, not Lance himself, but people with their ear to the ground pretty good know that this is the type of job that Lance Leipold would be very, very interested in at the end of his career, to come and see what kind of noise he can make at a program like this. And what if he goes 10-2? I mean, that's on the table. That's possible. He's kind of just, people don't like his age and so forth, but you're not worried about that, right, Ron?
No. I think we need to get the best coach we can find. And if you're going to put these artificial quality, hey, he's too old. Look, I don't know. I think he's a good football coach. And if he's the best coach we can get, if he fits, I don't care about him being 59. And besides, like, what's the average tenure? I mean, if you look at guys like Ferentz at Iowa, I mean, that's rarefied air. The guy's going to be at a school that long. The next 3 is Franklin. He's been at Iowa, Penn State, 9 years now? I think it was his year 8 for Harbaugh. Anybody else in our league been there 5 years?
I don't think so. 9 of the 14 have been hired since 2020, I think is the number I came up with.
Right. So, I mean, just thinking that you're going to hire somebody and it's a 10-year hire, I think that's just a result of good fortune more than you did something on the front end and picked the right guy. It's just, I don't think you can go in and say we need a 10-year hire. Like, you just wanted to get out of a 10-year contract. Now, why are you looking for a 10-year hire on the front end? Mm-hmm. I don't know. I think you're putting one hand behind your back if that's what you're saying. Like, hey, we got when you make those kind of things on the front end.
You know what's interesting with this coaching watch? Usually when we as observers begin a coach watch, it's usually late October into November, and you're looking at the current season's records, of course. This was a unique situation in which the firing pretty much came after 2 games. So the most recent body of work were last year's records. So the initial hot lists were based on last year's record. Now we've got a new season underway to develop to either strengthen some of those resumes or destroy some of those resumes. I mean, quite frankly, I thought Pat Narduzzi, there was going to be some people on campus that might have wanted to go in that direction, but he's 1-3. They lost to West Virginia, they lost to Cincinnati, and they played Virginia Tech this weekend. So his record, the timing is not good for him. His age is not perfect either. But for those that might be interested in something that's solid, he would have been a candidate, but his candidacy is being hurt by what they're doing right now. I know he's got a pretty good resume and body of work in ACC championship, and I'm not sure the fans would be in favor of that, but there are people on campus that are in favor of it, but it's essentially going to come down to Alan Haller, and he's going to do this solo for the most part, and as coaches put records together, it's going to be interesting. Charles Huff at Marshall, you mentioned him. I watched about half of that Virginia Tech game. I've got it on the DVR. I want to watch a little bit more of it. An impressive guy, a guy that went 9-4 last year in year number 2. I'm always interested in whoever like the best rising group of 5 coaches are for a job like this. And a lot of the rising coaches in the group of 5 are kind of have a Southern background, which I'm not sure would be a great fit. Huff, it's a little bit more of a Tidewater, Mid-Atlantic, type of thing with some experience at Penn State, a little bit at Alabama also, but he's 3-0 right now. They're playing Old Dominion this weekend. Old Dominion's pretty good. But if they win that game, they'll go to 4-0. They've got wins over East Carolina. And Charles Huff at Marshall beat Virginia Tech. That's no small task. Marshall plays at North Carolina State and Dave Doran on October 7th. That's an interesting one to keep an eye on. The rest of the schedule, it's like programs. James Madison's 4-0. Coastal Carolina's been pretty good over the years. App State's been pretty good. South Alabama's pretty good, although they've just lost to Central Michigan. But what if Marshall goes 11-1? You're looking at Charles Huff in year 3 that goes from 9-4 to 11-1. That's conceivable. And then what is his, does more support, jump on his bandwagon as we get into November? There's a lot of football to be played and a lot of resumes to be strengthened. Marshall's one to keep an eye on.
For sure.
No.
That's the thing. Like some of these guys are, whether they'll admit it or not, they're auditioning.
Yeah.
And it's going to be interesting to see this play out.
All right, now, my good friend Rico Beard on his radio show, I didn't hear him say this, but I think he said something along the lines of make a run at Marcus Freeman, and I don't disagree with that for a phone call. I think someone said Freeman might only be making about $2.5 million a year. He's a young coach, coordinator background, Great Lakes region, ties, represents himself really well. $2 million, Notre Dame might not be interested in getting in a bidding war, but I mean, Marcus Freeman's got to be very, very happy and feel blessed to have that job. Still, is it worth a phone call? Your thoughts on that? If they floated $6 million at him, is that worth thinking about? If you're Michigan State,
no, and I just, in my opinion, it's a quick no, and here's why. Unless we've gone through some other candidates who just decided they're going to stay put, I just think there's too much uncertainty in his resume. I mean, he's been a head coach, a year and a half? Where we are as a program, I need to see more. I don't need the hot shot. Could be, I'm going into this with I need some more meat on the bones, if you will. Mm-hmm. And he would be down the list a little bit. Before I got to Marcus Freeman, I would talk to some guys that have some years of head coaching experience. This is where in 2006 Brian Kelly would have been a good coach, but the wrong time for him. We needed D'Antonio. I think we're in that same situation right now.
And that's where Bill O'Brien is interesting, and we'll be doing some articles as we move along. And that's an interesting candidate. I was talking to Jack Ebling, the great Jack Ebling, the legendary Hall of Famer Jack Ebling, and he brought up Bill O'Brien. We were talking about that today over at Hockey Media Day. And I hope I'm not stealing any of Jack's thunder. I don't know if he was saving that candidate or not, but we were talking about it. But a lot of people talking about Bill O'Brien, or not a lot, but some are, maybe more should. 52 years old. Interesting that. I don't want to steal Jack's thunder, but Jack makes the point that Bill Belichick hired him not once but twice. He's on a second tour of duty there, coordinator for Belichick.
Sure.
Saban hired him to be coordinator. So the respect from those two for this guy. He was...
Man, you just not to cut you off, but guess who was the defensive back on those Cleveland Brown teams that had Saban and Belichick?
Alan Haller?
Alan Haller. Not saying, just saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if nothing else, he's going to make some phone calls.
Sure.
And someone asked, if I had to go to Vegas and bet on someone, you're not asking me who I think it should be. I'm talking about crawling in the mind of Alan Haller. And like I said last week, he's been groomed for this point in his career. Former NFL player, very principled person, very organized person. Has had some really good. I don't want to say rehearsal moments for this, hiring a women's basketball coach, a hockey coach, volleyball coach. All three of those, women's basketball is not started yet, but he made some tough decisions there to move on. And volleyball team last week beat Michigan for the first time in years. And that coach, Leah Johnson, coming in from, I think it was Southern Illinois, she's tough. Reminds me of Joanne McCauley a little bit. But she's tough. Adam Nightingale is off to a great start. And the way he went about hiring Nightingale, he admittedly didn't know a lot about hockey, but he put together like a Mark Hollis type of format to go through a checklist step by step. Because he was side by side with Hollis. He was side by side with Izzo in assisting Hollis when they hired D'Antonio. He sat there and watched the whole thing. And he was sidecar with Beekman and watched that whole thing, the positive and the negative. So he's seen this a couple times, and he's a football guy.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, he can watch how a team is acting and reacting on the sideline, how they're blocking, taking on blocks, and that's no small part of it. And that's a big reason why D'Antonio got the job. Izzo loved that part of it, and so did Haller. They played like a Big Ten team at Cincinnati. The record wasn't great, but the night they beat Rutgers, when Rutgers was in the Big East, Rutgers was in the top 10, Schiano's first tour of duty, they were like 9-0. They went to Nippert Stadium, and Cincinnati beat them like 14-10 or something like that. And that was D'Antonio that night played trestle ball. They blocked, they tackled, they punted, they made no mistakes. They beat a top 10 team. And that appealed to Haller and Izzo. All right. So Haller, when he set out to hire a hockey coach, he talked to people. He talked to Michigan State hockey players in the NHL. What do we need? What's important for recruiting? It's the agents and all those things. And, those that think, how you can develop at a program. For instance, I mentioned earlier that Michigan State has a freshman coming in from Slovakia. He was just drafted in the second round. He's already been drafted. So once you get drafted by an NHL team, I hate to say it, but those NHL teams, they have input on which college you go to if you're going the college route.
Sure.
Only makes sense, right? And if you're recruiting the top players, you're going to be getting guys that have already been drafted. So he got a lay of the land on that, talked to a lot of Michigan State players. Also, hey, he's not afraid to make a phone call. He called Jeff Blashill, who was the Red Wings coach, who was part of a Stanley Cup winner at Tampa, I think, and had a decent run. He was starting to rebuild with the Red Wings. He's respected in hockey ranks, but they just kind of had to go in another direction. And he asked Blashill, "Are you interested?" And Blashill's like, "No," because Blashill had spent a little time at Western Michigan. Blashill's like, "No, I think I'll stay an assistant at the NHL, and he'll get another shot someday." But he reached out to Blashill. Hey, you're a young guy. You've coached at the college ranks before. You're a Michigander. Just to gauge his interest. So Alan Haller's not afraid to make those phone calls, and that would have been a big hire. But Blashill, while we had Blashill on the phone, he asked Blashill a little bit about Nightingale, because Nightingale had worked for Blashill for the Red Wings as an assistant. So not only did he go there, but he also networked downward, and that was one of the reasons they came up with Nightingale. Nightingale is recruiting like gangbusters. They are going to become a national power soon. Okay, so Nightingale was a guy that came to Michigan State, played from Sheboygan, spent a little time at Lake Superior, then transferred to Michigan State. Was an assistant coach in the NHL a little bit, video guy, and wound up at the U.S. National Developmental Team, which is the big-time job for young players. It's USA Developmental Program. The best 18-year-olds and 17-year-olds in the country go there. It's headquartered out of Plymouth, Michigan. So he was there. He's coaching 17-year-olds, then the 18-year-olds, then he go back to 17-year-olds. It might have been there 2 years. I don't know. But anyway, might have spent some time in the USHL coaching a little bit. Anyway, it was a guy that if you're a national hockey guy, you might have thought he was. It's not really a mid-major job, but it's a little bit off Broadway. It's kind of on Broadway, but off. A lot of people thought Michigan State should go after Minnesota State's coach because he had played for a national title the year before. He was like 58 or 59, and they talked to him a little bit. And people thought they should have went after Providence's head coach, but he's getting paid a lot. So if you're Michigan State, those are kind of, the Providence coach would kind of be like your PJ Fleck level type of guy, right? And the Minnesota State guy might be, I don't know, he might be like the Mike Elko guy, but a little older. But although maybe that's not a perfect comparison. But he kind of went down a level and got Nightingale, so to speak. And Nightingale is going gangbusters. Women's basketball coach went down to the MAC, Bowling Green, went and watched her live, semi in disguise, watched the whole, as Saban would say, the whole shooting match, before they extended an offer to her. Went to Bowling Green. For the volleyball coach, Southern Illinois. Might have been Illinois State or Southern Illinois. I should know that. I think it's Southern Illinois. Anyway, went mid-major. So he's not afraid to go mid-major for this major job in the past. This job's more important, obviously, but he paid a lot of money for that coach, women's basketball coach, to come from Bowling Green. So he's not afraid to pay a lot, not afraid to make big phone calls, and not afraid to look at the entire menu. So, so all that being said, I think Elko's going to be right in it. There's going to be some other candidates. But I'm going to tell you, if Jason Candle goes 11-1 at Toledo this year, he'll get a look. You know,
Sure.
if Charles Suff goes 11-1 at Marshall, he'll get a look. I'm just going by the way Alan Haller's done in the past. He's gonna
Absolutely.
He's not just gonna just it's gonna be a wider scope than the situation was last time and when John L was hired. It's gonna be a wider scope.
You know what? I think definitely, and this is Alan's strong suit, though. This is where he shines. So, and he has time. He has time to pare the list down, and so I think by the time he gets to his top 2 or 3 candidates, it won't be because he rushed. I mean, it'll be a thorough evaluation, and it'll be 2 or 3 guys that he really believes can get this thing. I don't think this is a rebuild. I don't think this, folks. It's not. If you're, I mean, I don't know how much. Like I said, I don't know how much time those guys have to watch Michigan State film, but they cut the film on. They're going to see a lot of young talent, some young kids that can play, and they're going to see some some mistakes and stuff like that. But they're not. I don't think they're going to turn the film on and say this roster stinks. You know what I mean? Yes. And that's what usually happens when a coach gets let go, is that the roster's bad and they're losing games. Nah, I think you cut the film on. Matter of fact, I think some of those coaches right now, they cut the film on. They might find that we have better players than the teams they're coaching right now.
Mm-hmm. What about people are posting over here in the comments area because everybody talks about it. But Urban Meyer, you got any thoughts on that? I know.
You know what?
I know there's some people on campus that are like, no way. And there's some people on campus that are like, he would win right now.
Listen. No.
All right. Fair enough.
It just you can't go from scandal to scandal. No.
Yeah. I mean, we could debate that further. What was Meyer guilty of? But there was film of him at a restaurant. Some people would say that's not that big of a deal.
Yeah. No.
All right. Okay. You mentioned the roster being a plus. That the elephant in the room there is this season is 4 games in. We've seen 4 games played. Now, if players want to shut it down and preserve redshirt status, is there a chance that might happen? Also, with the coach being fired, players have 30 days to go into the transfer portal. How much attrition would you anticipate in those 2 areas, whether it be immediately or even after the season? Yes, the roster is in pretty good shape. How much of that roster would be intact for a new coach if the new coach is hired on December 1st, let's say? Your estimation, your guess.
I think maybe I would put, if I'm handicapping the number, I put, less. I would probably the maximum was 10 guys in the portal, probably 10. And I mean, how many of those guys are top, top are 1s or 2s? I don't see anybody that's a 1 or a 2 that I think he's out the door portal candidate. I just don't. Mainly because most of them are first year starters, don't really have a lot of film. So I mean, if they're going to take a flyer, I mean, I guess maybe, but I don't see anybody that's a sure shot. I'm going to transfer and land somewhere better in a better situation I'm in right now, staying here. It's my opinion. I don't know, but I don't see a ton of, maybe some of the freshmen that they still can go home or something like that. But just if you've been here a couple of years and you don't have audition tape, what film are you going to put out there? You're not hitting the portal because we liked you as a high school recruit. You've been in college 3 years. I just don't see.
What about
I don't know, maybe 10 guys.
What about someone who wants to enter the portal and retain a year of eligibility like Connor Hayward planned to do in 2019? Like you said, they still have that audition tape. It's still an audition tape. And all these guys, a lot of these guys think they're NFL players anyway, so a lot of these guys aren't worried about preserving a year of redshirt status. Some are, but a lot of them, especially the young ones, don't look at it that way. Some may, though, like someone who's a sophomore right now. I'll throw a name out there like Charles Brantley. He was in the portal last year, came out. Is he a sophomore? He's a true sophomore. And he's already missed a game because of an upper body injury. So he could play a 4th game this weekend. If he shut it down, he could transfer and come back next year as a junior. He's a junior right now at Michigan State, right? Or is I'd have to look it up. I'm getting old. I can't remember. But that's a guy.
He's a true junior, 3rd year.
So he could go in the, shut it down, play 1 more game, shut it down, go in the portal, transfer, and be a junior again next year rather than staying here and being a senior. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, that might make sense for somebody like him. But that's one guy, and that's kind of a unique situation. I mean, I just don't see a lot of dudes, like a lot of guys on our roster that.
Mm-hmm.
Let's put it this way: the portal has retired a lot of kids from college athletics.
Right.
You know, you got to have somewhere to go. You have a willing dance partner. Just simply throwing your name in the portal does not mean that somebody's going to come running and, you know, NIL dollars and, you know, everything's going to fall your way. So I think if these kids are doing their due diligence and they're reaching out to folks back home or whatever the case may be, you know, they're trusted, you know, circled, and if they have a suitable landing spot, sure, but just running to the portal, good luck, you know.
Right. You know, as far as other players that might be in that category, you know, I counted, I don't know, about 12 or 13 players who are in the playing group or on the edge of the playing group who have not redshirted, and that would be that's the first step if people want to shut it down and preserve redshirt status. Yep. Guys who have not redshirted. Charles Brantley's one of them. Alante Brown, but he's already transferred once. Unless he graduated, he wouldn't be able to transfer anywhere. Jaden Mangum, I don't see him going anywhere. Malik Spencer, Terrell Henry, Zion Young, Nateyote, but he hasn't played a game yet, so he could play 4 games here in the middle of the year, then shut it down later. Angelo Gross hasn't redshirted yet. Ade Willie has not redshirted yet, played a little bit last year as a true freshman. Dylan Tatum has not redshirted. He could shut it down right now and come back next year somewhere else as a sophomore or stay here and be a junior. Jordan Simmons, you know, he's getting his chance now. I mean, I've been expecting him to transfer for 3 years. He never has. Now he's getting a chance. So I don't think he's going to shut it down. He's getting his chance. And, you know, Montori Foster, I mean, I think he's a junior. He's a junior eligibility-wise. He's a senior, but I think he's junior eligibility-wise. But those are just the guys who would qualify as people who have not redshirted yet. 2 or 3 of those maybe so, but the majority of those, I think it makes sense for them to come back. I don't know, though.
Sure.
All right, so
look, and honestly, there's no benefit in those guys like jumping into the portal right now.
The only thing is, then coaches could legally come after him rather than illegally, like they are right now.
I don't think that really changes things. I mean, I don't think that significantly changes things. You know what I mean? I think just administratively. I mean, guys, the coaches have been fired, you know, for 2 weeks now. The same coaches that you know, they've already been notifying these kids. At least I'm sure they have been. You know, this isn't, you know, but I don't know. I mean, listen, it's a whole new world, man. Who knows? I just don't see. I don't know if we have that many kids. Look, and part of that, man, is you know, we talked about this earlier, Comp. These kids, you know, the ability for them to just lock in and get themselves off the mat, man, it's just I've been impressed. And you know, whether they ultimately enter the portal at the end of the season, you know what, I'll say this: it would surprise me to see kids that are playing bail on the season, enter the portal during the season. In the off season, who knows? But like right now in that 30-day window, I would be surprised to see kids in our playing group, you know, hit the portal. It would just surprise me, you know, especially in big numbers. Maybe a onesie, twosie, who knows? But just at big numbers, it would surprise me. Just because these kids, man, they've impressed me, man, with how they've able to just turn the page. Like, hey, man, this is our team, our season, and even in defeat, they look more dialed in a lot of ways against Maryland. So that group, I would be surprised if we saw a bunch of guys leave.
Mm-hmm. All right, now as far as Michigan State's football team goes for this weekend, you know, a lot of people talking about the quarterback situation. Noah Kim had some struggles last week, but also made some nice plays. Showed an uneasiness in the pocket against Washington after taking some hits last weekend. It looked to me like maybe he might have been overcorrecting a little bit to make things happen through some dangerous throws. I mean, 2 interceptions, but maybe fortunate he didn't have 2 or 3 more. Now he's playing Iowa, who specializes in turning you over. You know, avoiding turnovers is going to be so important this weekend because Michigan State has shown a propensity to turn it over. It killed them against Maryland. They're playing an Iowa team that has no offense, and they live on the turnover. So I've joked this week with you and others, maybe Michigan State should just punt on 2nd down this weekend. Just give it back to Iowa and quick kick, which is something teams used to do back in the 1940s. Nobody back there, just quick kick, let it roll all the way down the field. Give the ball back to Iowa. they will not make first downs. You'll get it back. Maybe they'll turn it over. I don't know. But it starts with the quarterback situation. People have been asking me about it. Noah Kim has been the better player in practice in the spring, August. That's why he's the guy. That's why they're going with him. He has talent. But that talent needs to show itself in the pocket when the hits start coming and so forth. No doubt in my mind, Noah Kim is the best quarterback on campus when it comes to playing touch football. I don't mean that as disrespect at all. But when you start taking some hits, you got to stay in there in the pocket and let routes develop. There was a third down play last week when he had Trey Mosley coming open, but he got rid of it early and didn't let the play develop. And if you're an offensive coordinator, you kind of need your quarterback to see things through. Now, Jay Johnson's been in favor of Kim, and it's going to start out that way for this game by all indications. But Michigan State has a lot of things going on, and that is among them. Ron, your thoughts on the quarterback situation?
We've talked about going back and forth with folks about this all week, and I think Kim's got to be the first quarterback off. Out with the ones Saturday night. I just wouldn't want to put that on Hauser's lap. Yeah, I know it's his first road start for Kim, but he's got more snaps under his belt. And I would want Hauser to come into that environment, and folks expect him to be the fix. That said, Kim's just got to play better. But the offensive line can help him out if we could just run the football, and we're not, we don't need him to throw the ball 35 plus times a game. We can just keep him, somewhere in the low 20s, and he's, somewhere 16 to 24, for 260 or something like that, no turnovers. I'll take that every weekend. But we got to be able to run the ball, shrink the game, and but at the same time, like you said, he's got to trust the play. You can't just bail on the play and live to fight another down. If you got to throw the ball in the stands or just eat it and take the sack, do it. We'll punt the football. Mm-hmm. But short fields and turnovers get you beat more than punts. Mm-hmm. So, and like you said, Iowa specializes in that. And they won't deviate from what they do. Throw a couple little wrinkles at, some of those, where they'll jump routes and things like that, where they, see it on film, they'll jump a few routes. But he's just got to, if you just got to take the sack and punt the football, that's fine. The old thing is if every drive ends with a kick, we'll be okay. I think that applies this weekend, most especially. If every drive we have ends with a kick, we'll be fine. Just can't throw it to the other team.
Right. The play I was talking about, it was a 3rd and 9. I'm not really sure when it happened in the game, but it's they bring a 6-man rush. Maryland did, and immediately he was kind of flushed from the pocket. He threw an incomplete comeback to Jerron Glover. Oh, and then they kicked the field goal. It was the field goal drive. I don't know if they made it or missed it. I'm not sure which drive it was. But Mosley was open on a dig if Kim had waited in the pocket, and it was max protection. Michigan State had Jordan Simmons in there, who's their best pass protector among running backs, kept the tight end in. So only 3 go out, so it's max protection. And Kim, as it turns out, he did have the pocket was there. He left anticipating the pocket breaking down. He left through an incomplete comeback. If he'd stayed in the pocket, he had Mosley probably for a first down on 3rd and 9. That's what I mean about, an offensive coordinator is going to want that play to go to fruition. It needs his quarterback to stay and hang in the pocket. Hauser, we've not seen him play a whole lot. Maybe he's got that. Maybe after taking a couple hits, he'll be a guy that will stay in the pocket and let plays develop, which is what coaches want. Kim was better than Hauser throughout practice. Your thoughts on how Hauser played against second string against Washington? In this game also, I don't think it was second stringers, but he came in and was a little bit, he lived a little bit dangerously himself, but made some plays. Your thoughts on Hauser?
Yeah, I don't have enough, enough game film to really just kind of get an idea of really what he looks like. I mean, he looks like Kim did in mop-up last year. You just don't have enough game film. But something you said, and I think is just for me, just a neon sign. You got to trust the play call, man. Like you had a 7-man protection.
Yeah.
That's when you don't bail on. You got the bodies. You know the protection. You set the protection. You have 7 men in the block.
3rd down.
You just got, you got to stand in there and make that throw. That's a D1, D1 quarterback. You got to stand in there and make that throw. But to me, the red flag is not trusting it. That's, that's the part that you worry about. You know, a bad throw, you know, throwing high, stuff like that. You can work on those. But you got to trust the play, man. You can't abort on a play, like just bail on a play before you even let it develop, and then throw late outside. I mean, you made 2, 3, or 4 mistakes on one play. Those are critical errors, man. It's tough to come back from. You know, then it becomes habitual. Next thing you know, guys drifting into sacks and, you know, staring down the rush and not keeping his eyes downfield. Some of those kind of things. But I talked to you about something I noticed just on film watching it, is that the play fakes, man, they're not going to fool anybody. If you just watch our play action, he either shows the ball or he's really quick with it. It's just not fooling anybody. So some of those quarterbacking things, you just got to clean up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's quality control also. So,
yep.
Pass defense was pretty good. You know, Maryland came in number 1 in the Big Ten in total offense at 480 yards per game. I think they went for like 360 or something. Tagovailoa threw for like 233 or so. And, you know, Michigan State was down 14-0, 21-3. And I mentioned to Paul Konerdijk, my assistant, as the game was progressing. I'm like, they're up 21-3, and Tagovailoa has not done anything yet. I was fully expecting him to catch fire and do what he does at some point. And, you know, an excellent college quarterback. Never did. You know, and Michigan State came out at the beginning of the second half, changed things up a little bit, went press man-to-man with some blitzes, which I suspect was their plan coming into the game. I don't think they started blitzing in the third quarter out of desperation. I think they wanted to hold that to the second half. And they did that. They blitzed him and never got hurt by it because, you know, coming into the game, Tagovailoa had hurt defenses more when they blitzed him than when they didn't blitz. But Michigan State did it and didn't really leave a lot of openings elsewhere. Chance Rucker getting his first start as a true freshman in place of Brantley. They attacked him. He played pretty well. And Michigan State's pass defense, aside from maybe 1 or 2 minor busts, both of which happened inside the 15-yard line, resulted in touchdowns. But between the 20s, the pass defense, after just getting bombed by Washington, I didn't think it was bad. You know, and Mangum sat out the second half with an injury. So is Armorion Smith and Malik Spencer deep. And, you know, Dylan Tatum still sticking his nose in there and playing with physicality. You know, Dylan Tatum gave up one play down the right sideline after Tunmise had to lay a jumped offside, free play, went deep. Pretty good coverage, good ball, good catch, 30 yards. You know, that was a negative against Dylan Tatum, but it's not like he was completely turned inside out and got a drag raced on that thing. The coverage was pretty good. And, you know, on film, it's good that he faced something like that. But overall, pass defense for the day, for the whole, I thought passing grades from the pass defense for Michigan State. What did you think? You still there?
You know, I thought we did a much better job of tagging routes, especially in the second half where we played a bunch more man. But you're right, I didn't see the guys running freely, you know, through our zones and stuff like that because we played a little bit more man. But something I actually needed to go back and look and see is if we rerouted any more on Saturday than we do.
I didn't notice. It didn't stick out to me. That's something that they've not done as part of this coverage. You and I have talked about that in the past, but I did not notice reroutes like from the nickel or the linebacker position. Did not notice, but
right.
Not sure. I don't think so. But
yeah, it looked like we were. But here, listen, you know, it's going to look better. I mean, let's just you know, this isn't slight Maryland at all, but you know, Penix is probably a first rounder.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's going to look different, but our defense was much better in the past game. Linebackers looked a little bit. Jordan Hall looked like he belonged in pass coverage.
Yeah.
It's a big kid, physical kid, runs well. So he definitely looked the part. Chance Rucker, man, true freshman, gets in there and just, you know, pass break up in the end zone. You know, competed his tail off. I mean, there's a lot with that kid. That was a good first game for, you know, a freshman. So I like the way the pass coverage looked. But this is a different test for those guys this weekend. This weekend, it's, are you going to put your face in the fan and take on some of those, you know, tight ends and fullbacks and pulling linemen? You know, because you're gonna be tested and your toughness is going to be tested. And just when you start, you know, getting heavier on your feet to take on a run block, they're going to try to slip one past you. So this is a different test for those corners. And, you know, the secondary as a whole is going to be, you know, physical this week.
Mm-hmm. And Iowa's offense has been really bad the last few years. You know that. Last week it was abysmal against a very good Penn State defense. So Iowa's going to come out. They're going to attack deep first one or two plays of the game, but they'll revert back to being who they are. They like to throw to the tight end. Everybody knows that. Lachey, their top tight end, was hurt, out for the year. Eric All is still around. Watching Cade McNamara against Penn State, the look on his face was, man, I can't do anything with these guys. He had no pass protection against a very good pass rush, and his receivers just were not getting open. He could throw to the tight ends a little bit for 3 and 4 yard gains. They went, 2.5 quarters without a first down. Terrible on offense. Now they're going against the Michigan State defense. I was going to look at that defense and say, we're going to load it up and run on these guys. Michigan State's run defense has been okay. It's got to be better this week. The question, Michigan State, they'll go 4-3 in this. All year this year when Michigan State's gone against two tight end formations, they've checked in the 4-3. Windman, Jacoby Windman, there's rumors that he's out for the year. I'm not expecting him to play either way. So probably the same linebackers as we saw last weekend. Halliday and Jordan Hall inside, and Brule in there as well. Those three. If those three can go all 15 rounds, okay. But in this game, it's going to be slugging it out in the phone booth. This roster was not put together to play a 4-3 every single week. 1 week here, 1 week there. Problem is, one of the guys that's able to do it for you, Windman, not available. Darius Snow's had his problems. Bless his heart, he's doing what he can. Still working it, still trying. He played 2 or 3 snaps last week. They might need 5 or 6 snaps out of him in this game. He's not moving very good. He's doing what he can. But there is a severe shortage of linebackers after those 3 starters. After those linebackers, you've got, Ma'anate Ote's not played all year. He's been, got hurt in the spring game. Barnett said some players are going to be coming back. Is he one of them? At what level is Nateote? Can he just walk in right now and provide help? Aaron Alexander, number 33, the transfer from UMass, he's gotten on the field a little bit. Hasn't looked terrible, but he's just getting his feet wet. A guy that played a little bit for UMass last year.
Right.
I think he's the first linebacker off the bench right now. I think it's in a 4-3. If you're starting Halliday, Brule, and Jordan Hall, I think Aaron Alexander's the next one off the bench. Darius Snow, not counting him, and assuming that Windman's out. Harold Joyner just moved to linebacker in August. He's been dinged up. I've never laid eyes on Quavian Carter, and he was on the not available list last week. Sam Edwards, the walk-on from East Lansing, he's in the mix, and there's not many other people. It's a problem.
I think what you'd like to see is just win first down and second down, and now you're playing a bit more nickel.
Yeah.
That
would help.
Your base nickel. So I think that's got to be the plan. We got to win the early downs, and then we'll come out with our nickel, and that way you can get some of those linebackers a rest. So this D-line's got to win up front. This is where we're gonna need some of those big bodies to get healthy and play some of their best football.
Similar problem up there, though, right? It's like last year. Chris Bogle played 3 snaps last week. Actually, 3 snaps against Washington. He didn't play against Maryland. You've got, Brandon Wright's been getting some time. Avery Dunn seems to be durable. Zion Young's getting some time. Tumisi Adelaye's still learning. So, but inside is where they're kind of, it looks like Simeon Barrow's on a pitch count a little bit. You've got Maverick Hansen. You got Derek Harmon. Those guys are solid. DeAndre Butler was playing good football. You and I talked very complimentary of him. He goes out with, it looks like a serious injury against Washington. Jalen Sami, we've not seen him. Played 1 or 2 snaps 2 weeks ago. Didn't play last week. Alex Van Sumeren, we've not seen him in weeks. So Sami's out. Van Sumeren's out. Dre Butler's out. Jared Jackson comes in. That he didn't play at all in the spring, and I don't think he was on the field in August. He got on the field last week, and he looked like he hasn't played in 6 or 7 months. I went back and watched his film during the winter when he transferred in from Florida State, and he was only averaging like 12, 13 snaps a game for Florida State. He was not great for them. Had some straight line speed and looks good coming off the bus, looks good in the airport, but he looked like he is, the conditioning part of it. He looked like a guy that really would normally not be in the first, second, or third string, but they had to play him. But that defensive tackle situation, it's a question mark also. We thought this was going to be a strength with Michigan State's D-line and these linebackers, but you start plucking Windman out of there, and you got Simeon on a pitch count, and you got Bogle out of there, and pretty soon you got Ken Talley playing some defensive tackle. Ken Talley played defensive tackle last week. Redshirt freshman, defensive end, 245 pounds, pounds, have been playing some defensive tackle. That's what they're up against right now. Now, Iowa's going to be coming right at them, and those guys have to buckle up and get it done. You know they're going to try because Michigan State is showing some heart.
We'll see who's back. Maybe some of those guys were held out,
Yeah.
an extra week. We'll see who's back. And listen, we can help out with that by running the football and, keeping those guys off the field. So, complimentary football, play a team game, run the ball, put some points on the board. You get up 14-0, and with that Iowa offense,
Oh man, that's enough. I think yeah. I was watching.
Listen, if we don't give up, this is one of those games. If we don't give up a short field, no short field, no big play. You say it all the time. Short field or big plays, but most especially in with a team like this that struggles offensively. We're not turning it over, giving up short fields, and we're not giving up one over, cheap one over the top. I mean,
you're halfway there.
It's hard. You're halfway there. It's hard. It's hard for them to beat us. We have to go out there and give us some help, and as long as we don't give them any help, I like our chances.
Punt on second down,
especially
man.
Early. You can't miss this one early. That place can be crazy early.
Yes. You and I
have all day to get juiced up.
Yeah.
So
Iowa, they do play different at night. They just do. They play up at night.
Mm-hmm.
They do.
Yep.
If it were a noon game, 11 o'clock their time, I'd like Michigan State's chances a lot more. I've not watched the Iowa State game yet. I'll be watching that tonight. Watched the Penn State game, and Penn State just tapped them out. I mean, Iowa's defense is pretty good. Not as good as it usually is, but it's pretty good. But they had zero.
Penn State's a lot tougher up front than they've been in a few years, man. Like I said it before, and I talked. They're a lot more meat and potatoes this year, man. Just substance.
They are.
Some of those teams that some kind of gimmicks. Saquon was good, but that team, there was kind of some flukiness to it. They just wouldn't line up and beat you. They had there's some gadget plays and stuff they were sprinkling there. Jump balls to the tight end guy. But this team, and they just go out and they went out and took Iowa apart with some toughness that
they did.
I've not saw. You don't usually see from Penn State.
No.
But you and I talked earlier, and I said, we'll see what they do against that team down the road because usually turtle against those guys. So
they certainly did last
year.
They go out there they gave up 400 yards rushing last year to Michigan, and a lot of it were gap errors
in between the tackles. Yeah, in between. I mean, it was
errors.
It was inside run.
It just like no one in the B gap on a given play.
Yeah. And some of it was just toughness, man. Like it's coming.
Mm-hmm. They look different. I mean, they look physical. Chop Robinson coming off the edge is good. Offensive line is big and athletic and well-shaped, just big bowling pins coming at you. And they just wore Iowa down. Iowa's defense is good, but Iowa's defense was getting no complimentary help from their offense. They kept having to go back on the field.
They played over 90 snaps.
92 snaps. The starting defensive backs played 92 snaps last week for Iowa.
That's a lot of football, man.
It's a lot of hammer versus nail on that one.
Man, that's a lot of football. I mean, that's almost a game and a half of snaps. So, I mean, if we can make this a like you said, 15-round fight, that you can start to see some residual effects of playing that many snaps last week, and then you come out, you got to play 70 snaps this week, 65, 70 snaps this week. That's a lot of football, man. And I don't know, man. I can tell, like I told you before, you don't realize that you're tired, that you're half step slow until you're out there, and you're just off just a bit. And that's all it takes, man. To miss a tackle, to miss a play, it's just be a beat slow, and you don't even realize it till you get out there. So we'll see. That's a whole lot of snaps. So, man, I think advantage, that could play to our advantage as well.
And I think that aspect would have been even more pronounced, I think, if it were an 11 a.m. game for them. It's just another half day lost of recovery for them. Instead, it's a night game, which helps them a little bit. It's not much, but it helps them get a little bit loose throughout the day. Theoretically, I don't know. But all right, a couple more things.
Any extra time off, any extra time of rest, yeah, it definitely helps.
Yeah, you get those guys a little bit earlier out of bed, a little more creakety on Saturday morning. If they played 11 a.m., that would have helped. But it's a night game, so no use worrying about that. A couple more things before I let you go. Assistant coach candidates for the coach watch for Michigan State. People over here in the comments area are bringing up names. Brian Hartline is a guy a lot of people are mentioning, wide receivers coach. Now he's a coordinator at Ohio State, even though he's not calling plays. Matt House, Michigan State graduate from Harrison, Michigan, defensive coordinator at LSU. Had also been defensive coordinator for Kentucky and assistant coach for the Kansas City Chiefs, linebackers coach. I watched LSU against Arkansas last night. I went back and watched it again. Interestingly, that was Dan Enos's offense at Arkansas against Matt House's defense at LSU. That was Michigan State versus Michigan State, coordinator versus coordinator. That was interesting. And Dan Enos, I think, actually had the better night that night. LSU won because they had the ball last. Score was in the 30s. I know Matt House has a really good resume and had a good defense at Kentucky. And I'm researching a little bit what kind of recruiting he did. When he was hired at Notre Dame, Brian Kelly's press release was complimentary. No, that was Elko. Who was it? It was Brian Kelly at LSU, right? When he hired him at LSU, he was complimentary of Matt House and the job he's done in the past as a recruiter. I don't know if that's lip service or not, but I'm still researching what kind of recruiter he's been. The defense, it was a 30 defense. Mostly two gapping, a 30 defense, and you didn't know which edge guy was coming. It's part of a 4-man rush, and sometimes it was 5. A lot of coaches say they hate defenses like that. I think Urban Meyer had an X's and O's segment that made its rounds on social media a couple of weeks ago, talking about how the defenses that he hated the most was the 30 fronts, where you didn't know which edge guy was coming. It's kind of the way the LSU plays it. A lot of off coverage though, not a lot of like press, athletic, tighten the windows. A lot was off quarters and some off zone and stuff. They changed it up a little bit. But, they gave up 30-plus points. And they had a rough night against Florida State also a couple weeks ago. So he's defensive coordinator there. Resume is good. But it's not like he's killing it right now on defense for LSU. And they've got the guy Perkins, number 4. He's one of those edge guy that walks up, former 5-star recruit. They've got talent in their LSU, but it's not like they're really knocking it dead like Duke is on defense right now. But that's Matt House. We're keeping an eye on him. I'm sure that, Alan Haller's looking at all these people and watching all these guys. So your thoughts, Hartline, House, and any other assistant coaches that might be out there that Haller will look at, if nothing else.
I think those guys are, in my opinion, are significantly further down the list. Like, I'm not considering coordinators until I've exhausted all of my guys who've already been head coaches or current head coaches. It's just too much uncertainty with staff composition and who your coordinators and how you're going to play and who's your like. Just too much. Yeah. There's too much at stake right now for us, our program, to take a flyer on a could be hot shot. And we could be missing out on the next Nick Saban or something like that. I mean, I don't know, but to me, there's just too much at stake to take a flyer on someone that's never been a head coach. And I think they get especially guys like a Hartline who's only recruited at Ohio State. He's recruited receivers at Ohio State. Like, I'm not saying that's an easy job, but it's a pretty easy job. You know what I mean? Like,
he recruits really well at Ohio State. I mean, Mel Tucker recruited really well at Georgia.
Yeah, you recruit receivers at Ohio State. I mean, like, you turn on the game on Sundays and there's Ohio State receivers all over the place. I mean, it's pretty easy to recruit their receivers there. So, like, just from my personal preference, I think, in my personal opinion, I think any guy that's a coordinator is going to be significantly lower on the list than current head coaches or someone who's previously a head coach that might be a DC or an OC right now. That's just, my opinion.
I would agree. I mean, organizational skill has to be really important at Michigan State right now as you're coming into this job.
Absolutely.
Right now.
Absolutely.
Like you said, Brian Hartline might be great someday. Like Brian Kelly, when he was at Grand Valley State, people liked him. Well, he's got to prove it a few other places. And there's going to be people on this list that fail. There's going to be people on this list that are the next Steve Cragthorpes and the next Charlie Strongs,
Right.
But some will become the next Brian Kellys, and it's impossible to know who's who. It's extremely difficult. So they've got Hartline. For my tastes, I just like to see him go to a mid-major and prove it there. Because but he might get a job before that. I mean, you look at Dan Lanning at Oregon; he's doing really well there, and he's kind of a big mouth character type of guy, which probably helped him. He's a different type. He's a different personality type. He's kind of a PJ. He's kind of a cross between PJ Fleck and Nick Saban. He's got all that energy, all that young energy, but he's a hard-nosed defensive guy.
Right.
But I mean, he was linebackers coach at Georgia. when Tucker was coordinator. He worked under Tucker. Tucker moved on. He moved up, and as a young guy, he became coordinator. So, Kirby Smart was impressed with him on the way up. Got a big job there. Helped put together a great defense. Won a national championship. And Oregon gave him a chance. But he is more proven in just a couple of years than Hartline is at Ohio State. Just because when you've put that defense together. But Hartline he's close. He's there. But I'm going to do a study on coordinators in recent years and how they've done at various places. And when Oregon hired Landing, I was like, okay, well, whatever. But he does have them buttoned down pretty decently right now, so they may have gotten that one right. But that's about it. Anything else? Anything else you'd want to cover before we let you go?
No, it's pretty much it. I think we've got a chance. This is a winnable game on Saturday. I think our kids are going to show up and fight. And put their best foot forward. I think we got a shot at this one. I like our chances. Harlan will have those guys ready to go.
That's going to be if they win that game, the Maryland game was more winnable, of course, and that was there for the taking, were it not for the turnovers. And if I'm a Michigan State fan, there's still a lot to root for, in my opinion. Just even rooting for these young men, and you see the heart that they're showing. You want to support them, and you want them to have some success. The players have come out and said, we've been working on this since January. We're athletes, we're competitors. We want to win the next game. We're not throwing anything. We're not giving up on anything. That's what you'd expect them to play. They live to be football players. They want to go out and compete.
For sure.
Plus, they want to show what they can do for the next level and so forth.
Absolutely.
So that is still intact, and whether or not you're a fan who thinks that Harlan Barnett would be the long-term answer or not, I think there's still an avenue here where you go 6-6, get to a bowl game, maybe 7-5, and if he's not quite knocked everyone dead in that whole thing, and been great, then you can even go to a bowl game and move on from him. I think in diplomatic fashion, in complimentary fashion, and all parties might be in better shape because of it. He's a humble guy. He's a humble guy. He's a Michigan State guy. He is not a self-promoter. He wants this job, but I think he could move on and understand that if it comes to that, if the time comes if you go to a bowl game and you get those extra practices and he takes care of the program and hands it off to the next coach, Harlan Barnett can feel good about that if it comes to that, and he can be revered for years to come for providing that service at this juncture. I think he's the guy to do that, and I think it's still possible, and there's a lot for Michigan State fans to root for in that vein. Your thoughts on that?
No, I think you said it all. And to piggyback off of that, it's still a lot for the kids to play for. So, 2-2, with 2/3 of the season left, there's no reason to mail it in, So I think our kids are going to show up, and I think Harlan and those guys are doing the best to get them prepared. And like you said, if I'm Harlan, I'm just going to do my best to make it a tough choice for them,
They ran the ball pretty well on Saturday, better. Had some flurries. There were some 9 and 10-yard gains here and there. The up-tempo run game was not bad, although they went up-tempo a couple times and went right into an interception. The defense showed some signs. If they keep hitting and keep working hard, I think that they can, and they play like they did against Maryland and a little better, and avoid turnovers, then these games like Indiana, Rutgers become winnable. Minnesota looks more winnable. Nebraska winnable. If you can be fortunate enough to win those 4, you get to 6 wins. This one would give you 7 theoretically. They have to play better than we've seen them play yet, which is possible. It's going to be tough to do it on the road. My guess is Michigan State's going to come out and give it everything they have, play hard, play a respectable brand of football, but I'm just not sure they'll take care of the ball well enough to eke this one out. And it might be ugly. It might be 12-7. You know what I'm saying? But maybe it'll be 14-12. I don't know. It's going to be interesting, but there's so many aspects for this football program, this team right now, and which way it could go. And Harlan Barnett's the guy to be in charge of it right now. He's an earnest person. He's over there working for the program and for the university, and not for himself right now.
Absolutely.
All right, I'll let you go, Ron. Anything else?
No, I'm good.
Thanks a lot, Ron. We really appreciate your thoughts.
Hey, absolutely.
All right, thanks a lot, Ron. Take care. I'll talk to you soon.
Man. All right, go Green.
There goes Ron Armstrong, a really valued member of the SpartanMag.com community over there, valued observer, very keen, astute observer of Michigan State sports, and I value his opinion and his friendship. Good guy. It's good to hear from him. All right, let's go over here and look at the comments area before we get back into the mailbag. Rob South, he's in first. Rob South, he's one of our more important guys over here at Spartan Mag Live. By the way, give us a like, subscribe to the channel, go to SpartanMag.com, become a subscriber. We'd love to have you over there. Rob South, he's first up. Mr. Boneman's here. Shifty Eyes 00 from Lakeland, Florida. John Elke from Clarkston, and Kenneth from Downriver. So that's your starting five. Downriver, Kenneth, we're putting him in the middle. He's tough. He's nasty. He's got the elbows up. I don't care how tall he is. He's going to be elbowing people in the groin. He's our guy. He's our starting five. Elke from Clarkston, he's a stretch four. Everybody in Clarkston can shoot. Everybody from Clarkston can shoot. He's stretch four. Rob South, first one. He's running the point. He's showing leadership. Got Bone Man and Shifty Eye 0 on the wings. Shifty Eye 0 he's running the lane as a wing. Shifty Eyes. That's my guy. He's also my defensive stopper. Michael Wozniak from Spring Lake, 3 and D. You thought, Wozniak was almost in the starting lineup, but sixth man. 3 and D value. That's valuable off the bench as the sixth man. Looking at your picture there, looks like you've got a pike. So good for you. Tim D from Toronto. K for Kawhi. Fleet says start Hauser, not because he's better, but so he can prove he is. Mike K says burn it down. Ellison 918, that's Brian from Fayetteville, Georgia, 5'9" shooting guard. A little bit late, but you're on the bench. John Coonan from Grand Rapids. Mr. Boneman from Harper Woods. Mike K with the Lions logo says clean out all coaches and coordinators. Oh, improvement. The Mo Peddler says, let's go Red Army all the way. The Mo Peddler, Red Army. The Red Army, I'm looking to see who that is. Back in the Holden Hall days in the 1980s, late 1980s, several people on 6 East Holden, we had a tabletop hockey game in a league. And my team was called Red Army. So I don't know if that's a wise guy from the 6 East Holden days or not. Interesting. All right. I still know some of those rascals. RJ from Colorado Springs. Doors fan checking in from West Michigan. And Doors fan, I think he's got a question over here in the mailbag. JD says, I know Barnett is the current coach, but Urban is a guy Michigan State has to attempt to get. Big Ten is not going to get any easier. That's true. I mean, Big Ten's going to be rough with these new teams coming in. It's going to be rough and rugged and 8-4. I think fans are going to learn. Maybe they won't learn, but it's going to become more like the NFL where an accumulation of losses is going to have to become acceptable, but I don't know if it will be acceptable. I think it should be in the future, but I don't know if it will be. I got a drinking problem, if you haven't noticed. Isn't that beautiful? I knew that was going to happen at some point. I've got this tricky Stanley mug, which does keep hot beverages hot, but it's got a lid that I've got a problem with, and I need it for my throat. You guys know that I've got a voice problem. My other problem is a drinking problem, but it's what it is. My buddy Katrina Rhea from South Carolina says, what's going on, Jim? Katrina, it's a good friend of ours for a long time. It's great to hear from her. And I saw her in a number of places in recent years. And I was at their wedding, she and Dan in Charleston. Saw her in Greenville, South Carolina for the Michigan State versus Davidson game. Not last March, but the March before that. Katrina, people were asking about you at the tailgate last week. And you got to get back up here for that. And I'm not going to tell them about the little joke you put in my laptop bag, homecoming weekend circa 1999 probably. So we'll keep that one a secret. Matt Latham says, go green. Bill, but it's great to hear from you and hope to see you soon. No kidding. Bill Houston from Gladwin says, if Michigan State takes care of the ball on Saturday, do we have a chance to win? Katrina, I hope you're still with us because I think you posted this like an hour ago, and I'm just now getting to these questions. So Hope you're there to hear me say hi. If not, I'll text you after the show to say hi. Mr. Bowman says, sweet, looking for a big year from our hockey team. Daniel Barry, Sports Highlights, says, hey. Fleet says, checking in from Caton Hauser, propaganda campaign to suggest he should start not because he's better, but so that he has the opportunity to prove that he is. Tim D says, Sam Levitt will be the eventual star if he stays. John Elke says, Maryland was ripe to be beaten. I agree with that. Samuel DeJesus says, hey, Comp, who do you think would make a great candidate for Michigan State? We've been talking about that a little bit. We will get back to it. K for Kawhi says, is it accurate we had Luke Fickell in the bag, but the Board of Trustees ruined it? I'm not sure if it's the entire board unless they could have done a better job self-policing. One or two of them creating some red flags is what I heard. Created a little bit of a problem and a delay, that among other things. And at the end of the day, for Luke Fickell, it just did not pass the smell test. But if there's one or two situations with the board that if it had gone, if it had just gone from, Beekman said, this is our candidate, let's vote, and they didn't want to vote yet. Wanted to look into some other things. Yeah, I think Fickell was going to be the guy. What do we have here? I Am Go says, on behalf of Spartan Dogs, firing Tuck was complete bull. Just as we started trending upwards, this crap happens. I Am Go says, no one wants Urban or a Michigan coach, nor a head coach from Marshall. All of those are working backwards. No to Pat also. Doors Fan 91 says, Tuck was not trending upwards. I Am Go says, still a hell no on Marshall. I Am Go says, we were 2-1 against the scum under Tuck. What are you talking about? Doors Fan 91 says, I like Rico, but his role on Valenti's show is pointless. They don't work well together. I've actually not, I'm friends with both of them. I've not heard the show lately. I watched some of the snippets on Facebook. It's always entertaining. KD Small says, have we given up on the year? Are we going to talk about the game with Iowa? And we eventually did. I understand that these posts are from maybe an hour ago. And Ron and I did talk about the Iowa game. And we will have the pre-snap read previewing Iowa. I'm a little ahead of schedule this week so far, but you'll see that if I'm doing a lot of work ahead to look at Iowa and the coming opponent, I've not been. I'd like to be writing more, so it's hard to write more and also get prepared for the pre-snap read. Going forward, that's going to be. I got to figure that one out. Been trying to figure it out for 20 years. KD Small says, too early to talk about coaches. I'm getting a vibe that you don't want to talk about this team. Okay, point well taken. I think more people are talking about the coach situation than the team, and maybe that's wrong, but I respect your opinion that you want to talk more about this team. So we'll get to that here a little bit more, maybe tonight. Budnick says, I think we need Jim Leonard, the former Wisconsin coach. He worked for Wisconsin on an interim basis last year after Christ was fired, went 3-3. They did not retain him, which is interesting. Leonard, he was really seen as a big-time up-and-coming coordinator a couple of years ago. I think in 2021 they led the nation in yards allowed per play, and then last year they were number 10, I think, in the Big Ten in total defense. So for whatever reason, the defense went downward for Jim Leonard. But he's an intriguing guy for the future. Is that someone they look at? Maybe so. Do his people reach out to Michigan State requesting to be looked at? Don't know. Wouldn't doubt it. Budnick says, we may be relegated once Izzo leaves. What do we really have to offer to recruits? Keep chopping, says Paul Christ. Budnick really likes Christ or Leonard. I'm not big on retreads in general. If you're a coach and you've been fired at the Power 5 level somewhere else, it's hard. There's not been a lot of instances in which a coach has went to a lower level and done better. I Am Ghost says we need a home run coach. I Am Ghost is complaining a lot, and I respect that, and he's part of This Is Sparta. I respect that also, but I need names. He's offering a lot of problems, but I'm not hearing solutions from him. Keep Choppin says Christ got a raw deal at Wisconsin. I think he's an analyst somewhere now looking for a new dig. Budnick says, do we throw the bag at Deion Sanders? Maybe Andre Rison or Kirk Cousins is a couple of years, could be our version of prime. No. In terms of Andre Rison or Kirk Cousins. But Deion Sanders, he's making a lot of noise. He's done a pretty good job flipping that roster, but they're kind of lucky they're not 1-3 right now. But I mean, they've made a lot of noise and they've been exciting and they've done better than a lot of people expected. It's great to have George Page here again. Once again, George Page, the former guitar player and keyboard player for Surrender Dorothy, which in the 1990s is one of the top 25 rock cover bands, not cover bands, one of the top 25 live bands in East Lansing history. Surrender Dorothy, George Page. Good to have him with us again. And he says, Howler's made some great hires. I'm confident he will get the right guy for football. John G makes a point. Didn't Mel Tucker also say he was not leaving Colorado just before he left? It's a good point. That was in response to Chris Kleiman saying earlier today that he will not be leaving Kansas State. True, they do go back on those things. Usually, before a coach leaves, they're more ambiguous than this. They don't come out and say, I'm not a candidate for the job. And I know Saban kind of did that at Miami before he split for Alabama, so it does not mean everything, but it seemed like he was vehement about this one. Plus, I can understand it because I'm not sure if I'm Kansas State's coach and I'm getting it going, I'm not sure I'd leave to go wrestle in the Big Ten. All right, what do we have here? For this weekend, as far as other coaches go, Kalen DeBoer, Michigan State, they're going to be looking at him, and that's someone that I think you call just to see. And what's he making, $3 or $4 million? And I know Washington would answer and give him more, and Washington's coming to the Big Ten, so you don't leave Washington for Michigan State unless maybe they don't have the money, but I'm sure they'll be able to pass the hat and get the money for him. Plus, I mean, he's got a good chance to go to the playoff this year, so his season's going to go long, but I don't know. There might be something there a little bit. But doubtful. Jake Dickert and number 16, Washington State. They've got a bye week, and then they're at UCLA on October 7th. Washington State with a big 38-35 victory over Oregon State last weekend. Jonathan Smith and number 19, Oregon State. They play Utah this week. They're going to try to bounce back against the most rugged team in the Pac-12. Oregon State's 3-1. We talked about Jonathan Smith a lot last week. More of a West Coast guy, but someone to keep an eye on. I was talking to Mooby about Washington State and Oregon State, and he didn't like the idea. He just didn't like the look of that game because there's just a lot of guys running free for big plays. And I agree with Mooby. For Michigan State, the way to get it done still today, even in this era of offenses, is to just have your crap together on defense first and foremost. That's what Michigan State's been in the past, and that's been the route to success in the past. I realize that eras change, but speaking for Mooby, he just was not thrilled about the brand of football, Oregon State, Washington State. I've got that on DVR. I've watched a little bit of it. I need to watch a little bit more, but I respect his opinion on that. I don't necessarily agree, but I respect his opinion. I'll hold out my thoughts on that. Lance Leipold, 59 years old. He's good, though, man. Number 24, Kansas, 4-0. They're playing at Texas this weekend. Lance Leipold with his 6th Division III national championships, 4-0. Back-to-back years. Last year they kind of fizzled out a little bit, ended up 6-7. What if Kansas goes 10-2? What if they beat Texas? He's 59. He's not said it, and he'll be asked about it, and he'll say, "I'm happy in Lawrence, Kansas. I just want to." He won't say what Kleiman said. I don't think. But what if Kansas goes 10-2? Does that make you feel differently about a 59-year-old coach? Mike Elko at number 17, Duke Blue Devils, 4-0 against Notre Dame this weekend. Talking about the Coach Watch. Charles Huff and 3-0 Marshall taking on Old Dominion. Marshall was 9-4 last year. They've got wins this year over Virginia Tech and East Carolina. That win over Virginia Tech, no small task. Marshall against North Carolina State on October 7th. What if Marshall goes 11-1? Jamie Chadwell at Liberty. They're 4-0. They play Sam Houston State this weekend. Liberty's got an easy schedule. They've beaten Bowling Green, New Mexico State, Buffalo, and Florida Atlantic. What if they go 12-0? He's more of a Southern guy. He might be waiting for the North Carolina job. 46 years old. They're paying him $4 million a year at Liberty. He took over for Hugh Freeze there. Prior to that, Jamie Chadwell was at Coastal Carolina, put Coastal Carolina on the map, 11-1, 11-2, 9-3 in his last 3 years at Coastal. Very much a wide open option, triple option type of guy. You want innovative offense? They're kind of innovative. A lot of people don't want to look at the MAC, but what if Toledo goes 11-1 with Jason Candle? They play Northern Illinois this weekend. They beat Western Michigan 49-31. That's a lot of points to give up. Lost to Illinois, should have won that game. Next 3 games for Toledo are easy. Then October 21st, they play Miami of Ohio, who's 3-1. Miami of Ohio beat Cincinnati. They got Chuck Martin, pretty good coach there. Chuck Martin's never quite had that above 500 record at Miami of Ohio. He's been 6-6, 7-7, 7-6, 6-7. But he won a couple national titles at Grand Valley State, 55 years old. But anyway, he's not a candidate. But when Toledo plays Miami, that's going to be something to watch. When Toledo plays Eastern Michigan November 8th, something to watch. Toledo plays Central Michigan November 24th, something to watch. Credit to Central Michigan coming back and beating South Alabama that last weekend. South Alabama with Kane Womack is a coach that I think is on the rise, but Central took care of him last weekend. You know, Dave Clawson is a guy at Wake Forest I mentioned earlier in the process. He's at Wake Forest, 3-1. They lost to Georgia Tech last weekend. Not great. They barely beat Old Dominion. I'm not sure it's one of his better teams. Bye week this week for Wake Forest. Then they play Clemson. Could be tough there. Not sure about his personality, whether he's a personality type that would really mesh well or would want to coach at Michigan State. I respect him a lot as an academic first guy. A little bit stodgy. Just not sure how high the ceiling would be with him at Michigan State. But Dave Clawson, an interesting one. And on the back burner, we talked about Dave Doran a little bit at North Carolina State. You know, former assistant coach at Wisconsin, Great Lakes guy. He's had, 4 9-win seasons at NC State. They're 3-1. They lost Notre Dame. They barely edged a bad Virginia team. They play Louisville this weekend. Louisville's 4-0. Braum, head coach at Louisville, that was the best hire that I can think of last offseason. Braum impressed the heck out of me at Purdue. And now he's at Louisville. And that's his alma mater. And not surprised he's 4-0. Haven't really played anybody yet. But Braum, excellent play design, structure guy on offense at Purdue and at Louisville now. So NC State going to have their work cut out for them there. But last year was supposed to be NC State's breakthrough year. Didn't quite happen. Maybe not their best team now, but what if NC State goes 10-2? Not saying it's going to happen, just saying there's a lot of football to be played. Drinking problem. Hope I'm not grossing you out. We don't have commercials here, so stuff like that's going to happen. Voice is going to screw up. I'm just going to take the lid off of that thing, but the problem is if I take the lid off, it's easier to drink, but then it's not hot anymore. All right, let's go back to the mailbag. Question number 2, Spartan Warrior from Northville. By the way, I don't think Spartan Warrior is from Northville, but at the SpartanMag.com underground bunker, if you post a question and you don't put your hometown with you, I'm just going to give you a hometown like Ernie Harwell. Excuse me. He says, which 3 current players would you want the new staff to retain to set the foundation of the program moving forward? Really good question. Jordan Hall, linebacker, freshman. Malik Spencer, safety, sophomore. I'd want those guys around on defense. And I'm going to say Sam Levitt. Haven't seen much of him. Played a couple snaps last weekend. A lot of talent. And I haven't really watched him. I've watched him in practice, but I haven't really analyzed him. And he came in just for a couple of downs last weekend. And part of that is to keep him warm, keep him happy, keep him out of the portal. Harlan Barnett making moves like that for the program, for the good of the program going forward, in case he's the guy. And he's still going for that. But I'm going to say Sam Levitt, just on a hunch there. Unknown's undefeated, right? Correct answer might be Caton Hauser. I'm not sure. I would also consider Jerron Glover for that. He's been excellent this year. Jaden Mangum back there at sophomore, at safety, sophomore, pretty good. Chance Rucker looked good at corner. By Job, defensive end, has shown some wheels, got in the field a little bit against Washington. Good speed, but he's still a guy that has a lot of mass to add. Needs to improve his body, needs to grow up. But I'm going to go with Jordan Hall, Malik Spencer, Sam Levitt. In the future, By Job might prove to be the more valuable of those, but he's not there yet. It's a good question. My 3 are not necessarily the right answer, but that's what I've got. Spartan Waz from Spring Lake says, do you see any indication that this administration will look to fill the presidency, the vacant presidency, before the head coach, recognizing that it might be a hindrance in attracting stable talent? And he says, has Alan Haller indicated if they are hiring a firm or conducting the search utilizing internal resources only. Great question from Spartan Was from Spring Lake. Yeah, I think the administration would love to hire a president by then, but they're saying they want to get it done by Thanksgiving. And I think Michigan State, I think if for the football coach, you want to hire the football coach the Monday after Thanksgiving, which would be like the season ends Thanksgiving weekend, right? And then that would be November 26th, 27th, Sunday the 27th, maybe even Monday the 27th, maybe even Sunday the 26th. I think as soon as the regular season's over, boom, got our guy. That's what Wisconsin did last year. They hired Luke Fickell away from Cincinnati. It is either the Sunday or the Monday after Thanksgiving. You have to do it right then because signing day is 3.5 weeks from that day. So you got 3.5 weeks to keep whatever recruits you have left and go out and get more. And that's going to be there's a lot of balls in the air for Michigan State, a lot of plates spinning, and a lot of them could come crashing to the floor. Don't hire the right guy, or if the hiring process gets interrupted by something, and you don't have a coach in place, then you're dealing with transfer portal people leaving and not finishing that recruiting class. Cantankerous situation. What if Michigan State goes 6-6? Do you hire a guy and you still have Harlan Barnett to finish out the string and go to a bowl game and coach in the Quick Lane Bowl? I think you do. And you tell Harlan, man, we love you. Here's a bonus. We want to keep you around at $1 million a year like we did D'Antonio. But we are hiring so-and-so, 3 days after the Penn State game. Different calendar these days, different challenging set of circumstances. But the administration hiring a new coach or hiring a new president by then, they say they're aiming for Thanksgiving. If they do it, good for them. But, it's happening concurrently. And there's going to be some candidates. Maybe Kleiman was one of them. There will be some candidates that will not want to, that won't consider the Michigan State job because there's too many unknowns of the presidency. I remember when I was a young reporter, I used to hear people like Perlis and others say, you need to have the president, the athletic director, and the football coach all on the same page, all working together, all pulling in the same direction. And I was like, what does that have to do with winning football games? But the longer I've been around it, the more I realize that is really important. And Michigan State had that in aces with Luana Simon, Mark Hollis, Mark D'Antonio, Tom Izzo. And they were the best football-basketball combination in the country. So they kind of proved that what others said in the past. I was talking about that with Izzo earlier this week, and it needs to happen again, but no idea who the president's going to be. And he's on the committee to help, not appoint a president, but to look after candidates. And I'd heard, not from Izzo, but I'd heard from other people that, not long ago, Woodruff, the interim president, came out and said that she is not a candidate. I heard that she was asked to do that because Michigan State was not real thrilled about the level of talent that they had applying for the job. So that might not get done by Thanksgiving. So a coach could come in here and take the job without knowing who the president is. Someone like Leipold would do it. Some of these others would do it from, these group of 5 coaches. Would Mike Elko do it? Maybe not. He beats Notre Dame? Maybe not. He can wait for a more sure bet of a coach for his next step. See how that works? So, and you ask me, has Allen indicated if they're going to be hiring a firm or conducting the search all internally? It's a great question. I might ask him that if I see him. Good, fair question. I'm not sure if he might respectfully decline to answer. Not sure. I'll try to find out, though. But it wouldn't surprise me if Haller asks a firm maybe to look into it, to assist, just to help him maybe not miss something. But Haller is more equipped to do this really than, he's more equipped than Hollis was. And Hollis did a good job hiring D'Antonio. But Hollis was not as equipped as Alan Haller is right now. That doesn't guarantee Haller will get it right, but a lot more equipped than Ron Mason was when they hired John L. Smith, a lot more equipped than Bill Beekman was when the Mel Tucker thing shook down, a lot more equipped than McPherson was when McPherson wanted to hire Fran Ganter, and he turned it down, and they hired Nick Saban. See if I can do it again. Two hands, no problem. Two hands, Comparoni. Hayden V. from Grand Rapids is Comp. Who are your personal top 3 to 5 coaching candidates now that everything is official? I'm still massaging that as the season goes along. There's one thing I liked about the process in 1995 when Nick Saban was hired, and McPherson was the president, and he made the decision. But he also hired an outside firm to assist. That outside firm looked into some candidates, did some vetting and so forth. And they interviewed, in terms of the coaches, the candidates, it was an interesting cross-section of candidates from various backgrounds. You had Nick Saban interviewing as a coordinator for Belichick at the NFL level when the Browns were pretty good before Belichick was fired by the Browns. But Saban, NFL coordinator, he had spent 1 year at Toledo, went 9-2, had demonstrated organizational skills that we all identify now. Saban, NFL coordinator. Jim Tressel, 1AA national champion at Youngstown State. Fran Ganter, 12-0 offensive coordinator at Penn State, best offense in the country that year. Gary Blackney, Bowling Green, the best coach in the MAC. Sherman Lewis, NFL assistant, Spartan. Jimmy Ray, NFL assistant, Spartan. So those 6 guys, interesting cross-section. NFL coordinator with Michigan State ties. You had Youngstown State, Division I AA national champion, Jim Tressel. 12-0, the hottest offensive coordinator in the country, Fran Ganter. Now, Penn State, it's not like they were reinventing the wheel that year. They had Kijana Carter, Kerry Collins, and they were very much conventional offense, and they just put 45 points on everybody. I think they broke Michigan State's Big Ten record for points per game. Michigan State held the record from 1978 with Kirk Gibson, Eddie Smith, and that bunch. That Penn State team that went 12-0 and finished number 2 should have won the national championship, but they did not run up the score on Indiana, and they fell from number 1 in the nation to number 2 because they didn't run up the score. Because people that vote in the AP top 25, it was all voting back then. They looked, and then, number 1 ranked Penn State only beat Indiana 31-21 or whatever it was. They were up 31-0. Let Indiana make it respectable, and that cost them a national championship. Unfortunate. Anyway, Ganter, who McPherson liked. Blakeney had some great seasons at Bowling Green, did not get this job, and never moved on, and stayed at Bowling Green, eventually went downhill. His wife had some health problems, which became tricky. Ended up getting fired a few years later, but at the time he was considered the best coach in the MAC. And then the two, Sherm Lewis, Jimmy Ray never quite got the job at Michigan State. But the firm that McPherson utilized to assist identified Les Miles as the candidate. Les Miles was head coach at Oklahoma State. And word was that Schembechler sent word that Les Miles, if you ever want to be head coach at the University of Michigan, you cannot take the Michigan State job. Whether or not he would have got an offer, I don't know. But at that time, who's the athletic director? They had not yet hired Merritt Norvell. And I can't remember if Mary Ledeen Baker was gone yet or not. But at any rate, McPherson, the president, ended up becoming the athletic director for that search. By the way, Peter McPherson was in the press box last weekend for the Maryland game. He was yucking it up over there with some people. And it's a little too loud. We're trying to watch the game. Mike Elko would have to be somebody that I would put near the top of my list. I mean, he's got great defense. Everybody knows him. No secret there. I mean, 28-7 beating Clemson. We'll see what they do with Notre Dame this weekend. Top defense in the country right now. Defense coordinator at A&M. Defense coordinator at Notre Dame. He's coached 4 big-time teams. He's coached at lower levels with Dave Clawson at Bowling Green, Wake Forest, and I think Richmond. So he's been a part of some of Clawson's programs when they've rebuilt it. So he's been a part of some rebuilds. He's an Ivy League guy. He's a tough New Jersey Ivy League guy. How about that for a mix? So, his staff, he's got Ohio and Pennsylvania, Buford, Georgia represented in his staff. I still have to look at some things more closely, but just on the surface, a lot of that looks pretty good. So I got him in my, nothing creative there, but the question was, who are my personal top 3 to 5 candidates? I got to have Elko in there. Keeping an eye on Jake Dickert at Washington State, and still Jonathan Smith at Oregon State. We'll see what happens with their seasons. A little bit iffy about their defenses. And the defensive mindsets. Dickert has more of a Midwestern bent than Jonathan Smith does. Smith is totally West Coast. But those are a couple guys at a couple programs that have been left out in the cold. Everybody knows that. I'm sure they would listen if a Big Ten team came calling. Bill O'Brien, coordinator, Belichick, former head coach, Penn State, organizational skills, 4 division championships with the Houston Texans, 52 years old, 51 years old. Also, Bill O'Brien has experience in crisis management. Took over at Penn State right after the Sandusky mess. And like Big Movie said, not that they need an in, and not that Bill O'Brien needs, any references. The fact that Belichick has hired him twice, the fact that Saban hired him once to be coordinator, I think that's someone that Michigan State would do well to talk to. And I don't mean to steal Jack Epling's thunder. I know Jack really likes him as a candidate too. I'm not saying he's top, but I think he's interesting. And if he listens, it's not someone you want to talk into the job, but if you call him and he's like, yes, right away, I want Michigan State, then you'd be like, oh, crap, okay, show us your plan. Type of guy you might be able to go interview, maybe be able to keep it quiet. That's one thing about Michigan State right now. They can look ahead to say, okay, when do the Patriots have a bye week? Can we fly out somewhere and meet with him in Kennebunkport? Somewhere. Maybe New York City would be easier. But do you find a bye week when Duke has a bye week and sneak down to Atlanta? I don't know. Do you interview some of these assistant coaches like Brian Hartline, Matt House? If nothing else, if you've got time during a bye week to talk to Hartline, see what he says, see what his demonstration is, he might really blow your doors off, right? I heard Nightingale's interview was great. It means something. And if Hartline's not your guy right now, let's say Hartline, leaves Ohio State and becomes a coach at Cincinnati in a couple of years, and you hire Bill O'Brien and he coaches you for 5 years, does a good job, goes back to the NFL. No harm done. He's done a good job. Program's in good shape. You know more about Hartline because you've interviewed him once. How often do you interview somebody and then come back and interview him again? Maybe not very often, but that could also be the case with Matt House, Michigan State guy. I'd like to see Matt House coach his own program somewhere, just personally. Resume's good. Built a good defense at Kentucky, a place that's not known for defenses. The LSU defense this year, so far, in year number 2, he's been there for 2 years, I think. Yeah, because he replaced Elko. It's interesting how all these are aligned together in some ways. Going all the way back to O'Brien, Belichick, Saban. But Matt House, interesting resume. Michigan State guy, I'm sure he'd love to come back, but is he right there? Nick Saban was coordinator for Perlis, left, coached for Glanville, Jerry Glanville, Houston Oilers, 1 year at Toledo. Showed he could do it, then back to coordinator. That year where you were in charge of the whole organization, I think is important for what Michigan State needs right now. When Oregon went out and hired Dan Lanning, the program was in good shape. They'd been winning. Willie Taggart was there and was kind of 500. He left, went to Florida State. Oregon hired Mario Cristobal, went up there, recruited extremely well, had a couple okay seasons. Played, they're supposed to be really good, and they played one of D'Antonio's worst teams in the Red Box Bowl, and it was a 10-7 defensive struggle, ugly football, but defense was pretty good. Oregon was not in bad shape. Cristobal leaves, goes to coach the Hurricanes back in his old stomping grounds. So the Oregon program was in good shape when they plugged Dan Lanning in there as a 37-year-old coordinator. I think it's different than what Michigan State has right now. Would Dan Lanning have been a good person to go into a rebuild at a place like Michigan State? Maybe not as good. He went in turnkey at Oregon. Michigan State is not turnkey right now. So that's why for someone like Matt House, be a little bit more complicated. That being said, he's a Michigan State graduate from Harrison, Michigan. Was a GA at Michigan State. Bobby Williams years 01 and 02. He was a GA at DBs and special teams the year after D'Antonio left as defensive backs coach for Bobby Williams to go to Ohio State to be defensive coordinator at Ohio State. So for a minute there, I thought Matt House might have been a GA for D'Antonio, but no, one was coming in, one was going out. But put together a good resume. Linebackers coach for the Chiefs, coached in the Super Bowl. Interesting guy, but LSU defense is not great right now. Maybe later in the year will become that. Worth an interview? Maybe. I'd say, yeah. I mean, because if you call him up, it's no harm done. Because it's not like, if you call up Lance Leipold at Kansas, it's hard to have that interview, whether it's Zoom or in person, and you prefer in person. It's hard to do that and keep it quiet. People freak out. But if you do it with Matt House, people aren't going to freak out as much. They may not even find out. But it's something that, it's going to be a busy time. I don't know how many people he's going to want to talk to. Some of it is a fact-finding thing. I don't know. I'm wondering if there's any candidates out there. Like, nobody knew that LSU was going to offer Brian Kelly. They took him like a thief in the night. Nobody knew USC was going after Lincoln Riley at Oklahoma. Now, Michigan State does not have the pull of an LSU or a USC, but I'm wondering if there's a candidate out there somewhere that we're not thinking of that on the down low is like, you know what, I would leave this place right now if you just give me a call. I don't know. I don't know who that might be because there's 64 Power 5 coaches. Who was it that left Kentucky to go to Baylor? Was it Hal Mummy? Someone like that. That was kind of a surprise. It was like a lateral move. I mean, everybody knew that Jeff Brown was going to Louisville because he's a Louisville alum, and he thought he did as much as he could do at Purdue. Gosh, he's a good offensive coach. It's a good hire for Louisville. That's a natural resource. When you've got a resource like that in Jeff Brown, who's killing it at Purdue, killing it meaning, he had a better team in 2021. Went to the whatever bowl that was and beat Tennessee. They beat Michigan State when Michigan State was 11-2. That offense with O'Connell was terrific. And then last year, they had a lesser team, and they won the Big Ten West. Then he left, and players left, and they were blown out in their bowl game. But excellent coach. But, I mean, so that guy was a quarterback at Louisville. I think he played against Michigan State in the 1993 Liberty Bowl, which turned out to be Perlis's last bowl game. I was at that one. And so Brom played at Louisville. That's a natural resource. It's a guy that went to your school, goes to Louisville, goes to Purdue, does a great job. You bring him back home. Even though going from a Big Ten school to Louisville is not a step up, but because he played there, that is a natural resource. And Louisville was fortunate to have that. Does Michigan State have anyone like that at this juncture? Not really. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Michigan State had a lot of people like that in the 70s, and only one of them became head coach, and that was George Perlis. Did a good job instilling some toughness. Rose Bowl had some really good years. Didn't quite keep the wheels on, but and he battled media a lot. And media was trying to keep him down a lot. And he helped them a little bit in some ways. But there were other coaches earlier in the 70s that went on to other jobs. Chuck Fairbanks, Henry Bulla, some coaches that had ties to Michigan State where it just never quite lined up for them. Dan Devine mentioned that in his autobiography. The last time that he coached here for Notre Dame, before they got on the bus, he went and sat on the bench at Spartan Stadium and just looked up in the stands, he wrote in his autobiography. This is probably like 1970. I don't know, he won the national title for Notre Dame in, 77? And his last game was The last game he ever coached, I think, was 1980 when they played Herschel Walker, when Walker was a freshman. Georgia won the national championship. If Notre Dame had won, they would have won the national title. That was Dan Devine's last game, 1980. Might have been the fall of 80 at Spartan Stadium, maybe 79. His last trip into Spartan Stadium. He says he went back on the field and the bench, sat on the home team bench, and looked up at the stands and reflected for a moment and thought to himself, I almost coached here. I could have coached here. I think when he was at Missouri, he was looking at returning to Michigan State. Instead, he went to Notre Dame, did some really good things there. Anyway, worth a call. Kalen DeBoer at Washington for reasons I just mentioned. Marcus Freeman at Notre Dame, maybe. Let's see what Notre Dame does for the rest of the year. If they go 11-1, they have some tough games coming up. But, are you happy at Notre Dame? Can they pay you? Is everything cool? But sometimes those things happen on back channels through agents. But agents, they talk a little bit too when news gets out. But you're asking me about my candidates. Mike Elko, and he'd be one. But you know what? If Duke goes belly up and goes 6-6, things can change. But I don't think that's going to happen. I like his defensive toughness. I like defense first. I think that he would be. I just from what I've seen so far, I think, and it's no secret. He's doing a great job at Duke. Michigan State's the one power job that's open, so people are talking about those two together. And at some point, he's going to be asked about it. He's going to say, "No, I'm doing the job at Duke right now. I'm happy here." That's what he'll say. He'll have an answer ready. But like I said earlier, defensive toughness, organizational skills, coordinator at LSU, coordinator at Notre Dame. He's seen it big. He's seen it grow and build at Bowling Green, Richmond, Wake Forest. New Jersey tough guy, defense, Ivy League, all that stuff. I like all that stuff. All right. One of the West Coast guys, whether it's Dickert or Jonathan Smith, let's see who has the better season. They already played once. Dickert won at home. Impressed, 4-0. He was 6-7 last year, or 7-6 last year. Under the age of 40. Handles himself really well. Impressive guy. So, Elko, one of the West Coast guys. Bill O'Brien. I'd still call DeBoer. Keep an eye on Freeman. I know those are pipe dreams, but I don't know. Keep your ears open in case somebody wants to make a jump that you're not expecting. Clausen, I've got a lot of respect for at Wake Forest. I'm not sure it's a fit. I'm not sure he'd want to do all this. But I'd keep an eye on, the best group of five guy that's out there. If Jamie Chadwell goes 12-0 at Liberty, is he a fit? I don't know. Is he looking for that North Carolina job at some point? If Marshall goes 11-1, keep an eye on him, maybe interview him. If Toledo goes 11-1, 10-2, it's one thing when Jason Candle at 43 years old, he was handed the job from Matt Campbell and immediately went like 9-3, had a couple of good years, then came down to like 6-6, 7-5, 6-6, and then last year 9-4 again. And if he has another good year this year, he has shown that he can go up with this talent. Kind of like a D'Antonio thing, come back down, then go back up with a second group of players. That's no small thing. Still researching him and what he's all about. Should have beaten Illinois. If Toledo were 4-0 right now with a victory over Illinois, I'm not saying he's the best guy, but that's someone I'd be interested in interviewing at some point, either Candle or Huff going forward. Could be someone else moving into that category. But I'd like to pinpoint one guy in the group of five. If unless Elko just like kills it and he wants the job, that'd make it pretty easy. Let me see here. I should just I'll open up the phone lines. We had some calls last week. Might as well do this. Appreciate everybody watching the program tonight. Last week we had some people that wanted to call, and they did. I don't know if anyone will want to tonight or not, but we'll put it out there. All right, so I was kind of long-winded with that, and there's others out there that I didn't mention, but nothing creative. Got my eye on Elko, got my eye on the West Coast guys, got my eye on Bill O'Brien. Might be a little creative. Got my eye on Jason Candle. Desert Sparty, question number 5 from Ahwatukee, Arizona. He says, Comp, who's your starting 5 for the Michigan State basketball team to start the season? A.J. Hoggard to the point, Tyson Walker the 2, interchanging the point, those two, mostly Hoggard. Jaden Akins at the wing. Akins, by the way, getting his man face. Sometimes I go watch these guys practice and so forth, and this is I don't know if this is a video that I shot from practice. They let us shoot the first 5 minutes of practice the other day, and it looks like the video is kind of chopping up on me. I'm not sure why it does that sometimes, so I might have to take this down. Rats, that's too bad. Tried. Sometimes video works, sometimes it doesn't. Anyway, Hogard, Walker, Akins. Akins is becoming a man. He's gotten bigger through here, and he just looks older. You know, you recruit a guy, 17, 18, comes in, freshman, 19, still kind of a puppy, 20. Well, he's getting his man face. That's what that means. Players do it all the time. And sometimes their game goes up a little bit too. Akins is going to be pretty good this year. Stays healthy. Malik Hall at the 4. Manny Sissoko at the 5. Sissoko's bigger, stronger, getting a little bit better with the touch all the time. I mean, he's never going to be Kareem in there or Elijah, but gets it in deep. He can finish. He's getting better. Malik Hall has been injured. Izzo said the other day that Malik Hall is 100% healthy for the first time since his sophomore year. Battled a foot injury all last year, but his skills are not back to 100% full blast. So he's got to get his skills together, and that's going to be a key for this team all year. As we watch Michigan State basketball, the stretch 4, you got to be able to hit 3-pointers to make the entire thing go. Malik Hall gives them a chance to do it. Xavier Booker is going to play some 4 also, but he has a lot of basketball to learn, especially when the ball is out of his hands. He's better than he was 12 months ago. They're working on him. He's listening. Has a lot of work to do. Be patient with Xavier Booker. Malik Hall, the skills need to come back to him a little bit. Got to keep his confidence up. That's going to be, in terms of winning a national championship, Malik Hall needs to take that step. Not a similar type of player, but A.J. Granger, the step he went from his junior to his senior year, immense. Goran Sutan, the jump he made from his junior year to his senior year, immense. Malik Hall needs to do that. Is he capable? Maybe. Will he do it? Remains to be seen. Question 6, WX Spartan 23 from Wixom, Michigan, says, is the Michigan State football team more together than we think? There will no doubt be attrition, but could it be less attrition than what many are making it out to be? Great question. I have no idea. But the team, I don't know how together they are, but they are, they're very dutiful in showing up and going to work and doing the right things. And I hear the coaches are just like really impressed with that. Because quite frankly, there's a lot of transfers on this team. There's a lot of players on this team that these coaches have only known for a year, or in some cases 2 years. I mean, in college football, there's always going to be a lot of players that are freshmen and second-year players. But in the transfer portal era, there's even more. But the coaches are impressed with the way things have been held together. You think back to Bobby Williams' last year when that fell apart. That was, you had players getting in trouble. It was not good. Happened a little bit at the end of a little bit. No, it was mostly, it was 02 was the main thing. But not seen any indications of that yet, to their credit. Question 7, Tim Rittinger, not the former Michigan State football player. This is Rittinger from Ypsilanti. He says, now that we've had a little better look at Caton Hauser last weekend in a winnable game, albeit down a bit when he came in, parentheses, and seeing Noah Kim in the first 4 games, do you think that Noah has played well enough to keep the quarterback 1 position? He says, is the push for Hauser valid or just a case of we haven't seen him play that bad of a game yet? All of that. Noah Kim, talent. We were going to learn more about him as the season went along. And we've learned that in the pocket, after he gets hit a little bit, there's an uneasiness that he needs to correct if he's going to hold on to the job. If it continues to be that way, Hauser's going to get his shot earlier in the game than he has the last 2 games. And we will learn more at that point. Kim's been better in practice. Hauser closed the gap in August. I don't mean this disrespectfully, but Kim has been better, the better quarterback when it comes to touch football. And that's what they play in practice. Quarterback doesn't get tackled, so it doesn't affect their thinking as much in the pocket, hanging in there. Talked about that play with Mubi. There was the Washington play also. He got hit a couple times, and then it was like 3rd and 9, and Washington came up, and they were showing blitz with like 6 or 7 up front, maybe even 8, threatening to blitz. Takes a snap and gets rid of it right away. And they didn't blitz. They threatened blitz, and they dropped 8. They only came with 3. And he didn't even take a second to look at it. He was getting rid of it. It looked like he was, I don't want to say afraid, kind of was, but is that an experience thing? I don't know. A week later against Maryland, talked about that play a moment ago. Michigan State had maximum protection personnel in. Jordan Simmons, their best pass protection running back in the game, kept the tight end in. 5 + 6 + 7, max protection 7. 3 going out. It's 3rd and 9, I think it was. I think they rushed 6. He sees a blitz, threw a hitch real quick, like a little hot curl. No chance to get a first down. If he trusts maximum protection, which is, they're in there for a reason. If he trusts it, he had Trey Mosley open on a dig, which I'm sure was pointed out to him immediately when he went to the sideline and during film study. What I'm saying here is nothing new to them. What I'm saying is, my shirt's unbuttoned. What I'm saying is, these are learning instances he has to iron out, and needs to show that he's got pocket presence to withstand that heat. Stare down the barrel of blitzes or threaten blitzes, carry out to play. If he doesn't take steps in that area, Hauser's going to be in earlier. Maybe Hauser's got that gamer factor to him. Don't know. Doc Spartan from Lansing says, how many players will enter the portal? I mentioned Arizona State had 42 enter the portal. Nebraska had like 22. I don't know. This is uncharted territory. That's a big factor for how quickly they can rebuild or keep things on the tracks. Don't know. Question 10, Mullen Lobby from East Lansing says, Comp, why should we consider a coordinator or a non-Power 5 for our head coach? Unless they're the best of the best as a coordinator, it's hard to know if it'll work. Huff is not proven enough for me. What do you think of this list? Elko, Duke, Dickert at Washington State, Leipold at Kansas, Smith at Oregon State, and Dan Mullen. I like that list. And I think your thought process is good. I think Michigan State needs a proven coach. And it's hard to get a proven Power 5 coach to make a jump to another Power 5 school. It's rare. I did a study on this, SpartanMag.com, an article we did last week. And I basically took the 64 Power 5 schools. There's 20 blue bloods. That's, Ohio State, Notre Dame, Alabama, Penn State, Georgia, Michigan, Texas, Florida, Georgia, Oklahoma, USC. You know who they are. Include, Auburn, that next level, Texas A&M, Florida State. I threw Nebraska and UCLA in there just to make it 20. You know who they are. Michigan State's not one of those 20. The next 10 are 10 that might think of themselves as top 25 programs. Michigan State, Iowa, Wisconsin, Arkansas, South Carolina, Washington, that type. And then from 30 on down is everybody else. 34 schools on the bottom is everybody else. Syracuse, Washington State, Oregon State, Stanford, Cal, Indiana, Purdue, Wake Forest, Kansas, Kansas State, Texas Tech, those type of schools, right? All right, those 34, the 34 bottom in the Power 5, I looked at those 34 schools and who they hired as their current coach and where those coaches came from. Out of 34, only one of the 34 came from a Power 5 school and is now head coach at one of those 34 in that third tier. And that one coach is Jeff Brom, who went from Purdue to Louisville. He's the only one out of 34. Out of the 34, only 3 coaches had ever been a head coach at the Power 5 level. Brett Bielema was one. Of course, coached at Wisconsin and Arkansas, got fired, NFL, then Illinois. He didn't go straight to Illinois from a Power 5 school, but he had Power 5 experience. There were three I can't think off the top of my head. Point is, you make a good point, Mullen Lobby from East Lansing. He says, why should we consider a coordinator or a non-Power 5 for a head coach? Why? Because there's not many of them available. You mentioned some good ones there. Most coaches at that level might not go to those bottom 34s. Would they go to a Michigan State? Would they go to a South Carolina? Would they go to a Kentucky? Yeah. Arkansas? Yeah. Arkansas proved it when Bielema went from Wisconsin to Arkansas. Is Michigan State the type of program that can attract that? Yes, barely. But you're asking why not? There's not many Power 5 head coaches right now that have an attractive record that would look to move. There's not many. You listed pretty much all that exist. Elko, Dickert, Leipold, Smith. Kleiman was one. He's not doing it. I mean, you look at the Power 5, there's 64 teams in the Power 5. I'm guessing if you want to hire a Power 5 coach, you want to take someone who's in the top 25. So eliminate those other 40 or whatever. So how many teams are in the top 25? Trick question. 25. 12 or 15 of those are going to be untouchable. You're not going to get Josh Heupel from Tennessee. He just signed a $9 million deal. You're not getting Lincoln Riley. You're not getting Sarkisian. You're not getting Saban. You're not getting Kirby Smart, obviously. Right? You're not getting James Franklin. You don't want Harbaugh. You're not getting Ryan Day. Those guys are untouchable, right? So you want a top 25 coach. 15 of those guys are untouchable. That leaves you with 10. Elko's one of them. Dickert might be one of them. Leipold might be one of them. Jonathan Smith might be one of them. It is a small pool if you want a proven Power 5 coach. You mentioned Dan Mullen, former Urban Meyer assistant, went to Mississippi State, had some good years, went to Florida, fired, became unpopular there because he wasn't really into the recruiting gig. So he's not known as a recruiter. I said earlier, I'm not thrilled about retreads. Will Muschamp, Florida, fired. South Carolina, fired. That type. Charlie Weiss, Notre Dame, fired. Kansas, terrible. Ron Zook at Florida, went to Illinois, went to a Rose Bowl in like year 3, but that was the only winning season he had in 7 years. And Mike Loxley was his assistant coach. Loxley was a retread. Went to New Mexico State, was a disaster. Had some personal problems. Went back, became an analyst at Alabama. And then he was hired at Maryland because Maryland had a tragic situation. They needed someone from the area to come in and just crisis manage. That's why Loxley was a good fatherly type of hire there. And lo and behold, he's done a good job. That's one retread who's done well. Sometimes they do well, but by and large, I'm not big on retreads. Dan Mullen's a retread. If he wants to get it going again, let him try it somewhere else. You've noticed Tommy Bowden gave it a try at Akron. Didn't work out very good. Similar type. But you know what? Every time that those of us on the outside think we've got it figured out, there are things that happen that make no sense. And I've used the example before. Dabo Sweeney made no sense as a hire at Clemson, and he's done great. Wide receivers coach, interim coach, was not that great as an interim coach, had not been a coordinator. He moved up to coordinator when he was interim coach, I think. 3-3, and they hired him. Made no sense. He's been great. Conversely, Scott Frost, hero, Lincoln, Nebraska, goes to Central Florida, 12-0. Of course he's the guy. Bring him to Nebraska, heroes welcome. He is 100% central casting, perfect for that job. Disaster. Scott Frost, perfect hire, disaster. Dabo Sweeney, terrible hire, was great. Makes no sense. All you can do is put the percentages together and make the most educated guess you can make. Nobody knew D'Antonio was going to be that great. But Dan Mullen, I'm going to pass. Question 11, Tu Feng from Cincinnati says, it seems like Iowa has injuries and their tight end and running back room. How can Michigan State use that to their advantage on defense? Yeah, it's a terrible Iowa offense. Lachey was a good, I think that's how you pronounce that. He was like all Big Ten tight end, very good. Ankle injury in week 2 or 3, out. They have Eric All, who's okay, another tight end who's okay. It's a very tight end heavy offense, but the tight ends are not really game breakers. So it makes a mediocre offense even worse. So that's to Michigan State's advantage right there. How do you use it to your advantage? Don't turn it over to them. Don't give them a short field. Punt it back to them, make them go 80 yards. They're going to struggle to do it unless they just have a feel-good catch-fire moment. It's a weird situation for Iowa. They were just embarrassed at Penn State, 31-0. Defense played hard, got worn down. 92 snaps on defense, worn down. Offense, terrible. Could not pass protect. No one could get open. McNamara's looking around like, I got nothing to work with here. Playbook from 1979. And I'm the most... Hey, I appreciate two-back, I formation stuff more than anybody, but it just doesn't give you a lot of advantages, especially if you're not that physically great on the offensive line and you don't have mismatched guys at receiver. I don't know what offense works with that type of personnel. You know, in the past, Iowa used to have one or two good wide receivers. I'm not seeing that right now. That's among their problems. So don't turn it over against a defense that produces more turnovers than anybody in the country, a defense that scores more defensive points than any program in the country over the last 10 years. Do not turn it over. Do not give up a pick six. Sounds simple, right? Until you play against that defense and the way they play with one brain on that Iowa defense. And it's not the most greatest physical Iowa defense ever, but they are physical. It's not the greatest Iowa defense, but they still play with one brain. And they change it up and they pass guys off in their zones and they get interceptions and they return them for touchdowns. You do that once with Michigan State's offense against that defense, behind the eight ball, hard time winning that game. So how do you use that to their advantage? If you're Michigan State, you punt on second down. I'm joking, kind of. And also, Tufeng out of Cincinnati says, do we see a 4-3 base against Iowa? If so, would that be Halliday, Brule, and Hall? Yes and yes. It will be a 4-3 because Iowa's going to play a lot of two tight ends, a little bit of high formation. They're going to want to run it. And Michigan State showed last year that they prefer to go 4-3 against that type of heavy personnel. Did that against Wisconsin. Did that against Illinois. Worked out pretty well. Like I said earlier, problem for Michigan State is they've got very little depth at linebacker. It's been a program at Michigan State where they've recruited to a 4-2-5 system. They've recruited more defensive backs and fewer linebackers. Just go back and look at the last few classes. They might sign one or two linebackers. Well, now that's coming back to haunt them a little bit when you play a team like Iowa. Week in and week out, maybe you're better off recruiting to a 4-2-5. I don't know. But right now, when you've got Winman out and Nate Ote is not played, and you don't have a lot of linebackers on scholarship, run into a problem. It's a good thing Hall has done really well. Brule's okay. Halliday played better last week, struggled against Washington. Like I said, Aaron Alexander looks like he's the first linebacker off the bench. Darius Snow played a little bit. I'm not sure how much he can give. Harold Joyner's been hurt. He's new to the position. What can he do? I'm not sure. Sam Edwards is a walk-on. He might be playing. Hold on here. Why is this so... taking forever? Hold on a second. I got to send a message. I am a reporter, so sometimes... what we got here? All right. Sorry about the delay there. So Michigan State recruiting to that 4-2-5. I understand some of that logic. I mean, you'd love to recruit to all defenses, right? But it seemed like they brought in, including transfers, just a lot of defensive backs and not as many linebackers. And it might be hurting them right now. In an 85 scholarship era, believe it or not, it's hard to take on more than 2 injuries at any position. It's hard for it. If you do, you're going to be dipping into walk-ons and freshmen real quick. And that's where Michigan State is, a little bit of defensive tackle and linebacker again. All right. Jim from Cereal City in Battle Creek, that's the Doors fan guy. He says, can you speak to the regression of the offensive line as a unit or the lack of development? Are you ready to say that Kapilovic is a failure in terms of his scheme and developing his players? Also, thoughts on Jason Novak. Guys do not seem as strong as we've had in the past. He says, thanks and go green. That's Jim from Battle Creek. Offensive line last week was a little bit better with run blocking. A little bit better. 5 yards per carry for the tailbacks, not bad. The big problem was the 4th and 1 stoppage at the 1 yard line. On that one, Spencer Brown, his footwork, he just kind of did a little Muhammad Ali shuffle instead of just taking a real aggressive zone step. I would think it'd just be one. I don't know what it was, but his footwork did not look conducive to what they were trying to get done. He was the play side tackle. He's taking on an outside linebacker who weighed 260. Your offensive tackle should be able to dominate that guy moving back. Instead, his feet didn't look right, and the linebacker makes first contact on him. Low man moves him back, buckles the play. Evan Morris, play side tight end. He doesn't get his guy blocked. So you're running off tackle. You didn't trust things inside. It's a bear front. So it didn't work. So that player on that particular play, not so good. Duplain and Samac, I've been surprised. They've struggled this year. Samac gave up that one sack when Noah Kim fumbled and was a little bit injured. That was Duplain, who otherwise had a decent game. He's been struggling. Samac's been struggling, but those two guys both played, I'd say, their best game of the year so far last week. Even though Duplain gave up that one sack, which was expensive. And there was a 4th and 2 when they showed a bare front, and Michigan State picked it up. Carter gains 4 yards. It's 4th down and 2. Duplain did a really good job. He followed Duplain. Duplain turned, sealed his guy. Number 40, the defensive tackle, Talise Johnson, who's 6'2", 298. Duplain turned him, sealed him. Carter gains 4 behind Duplain. And it was a bare front, and they did that play where the right tackle pulls and folds into the A-gap. Same play that they did for Kenneth Walker on the 30-yard touchdown, the last touchdown against Michigan against the bare front. Same play. This was 4th and 2. They ran that, but they ran to the left. They did the fold on the right side, but it was Duplain on the left side. Duplain with a key block on that 4th and 2 conversion. Samac, there was a 3rd and 3 late in the third quarter, ran an inside zone. Linebacker from Maryland shooting the B gap. Wigginton took that guy where he wanted to go. Carter gains 19 yards on 3rd and 3 inside zone. Samac did a good job controlling and sealing the nose guard. However, on that interception, there was that one interception where Samac snapped it early, and Noah Kim made a bad situation worse by throwing that jump ball for an interception to Mosley, intercepted by Glendon Miller. Noah Kim trying to make a play, but Michigan State, I think, had just had a nice chunk play for a first down. A lot of Noah Kim's dangerous plays were right after a good play. That's what made it even a little bit more unnerving. So I think there's a good player in there somewhere. He's got the arm talent. Everybody sees that. He's had 4 starts. I've said it a million times. Kirk Cousins did not look great after 4 starts. But the pocket presence, the pocket poise, can that be taught with experience? Great question. Also on a 4th and 2, when Hauser was in there, Samac made a nice play. Samac did a good job controlling the nose and turning him out, and Nathan Carter gains 3. So a couple of 4th and 2 conversions in that 3rd and 3 gain of 19. You had Samac and Duplain have good plays on those plays, but by and large, those two have not been as good as expected this year. Offensive line in general, not good against Washington, obviously. And really, they didn't do a really good job against Richmond and Central, even though Carter gained over 100 yards. They had some trouble short yardage, as you know. Showed some bright spots last weekend, some flashes. Now they're going to be playing a better defensive line than Maryland in Iowa. It's not a great Iowa. It's not a vintage Iowa defensive line. It's pretty good. It's always good at Iowa, but it's not great like it's been in years past. Plus, they just played 92 snaps against Penn State. The defensive linemen did not play all 92, but they played a lot. I think I've got the notes right here. Here it is. The corner played 93 snaps. The middle linebacker played 93. The strong safety played 92. The free safety played 92 snaps. The corner played 92. The entire secondary played 92 or 93 snaps. Linebacker, 84 snaps last week. Defensive tackle, Lee, 71 snaps. Defensive end, Evans, 70 snaps. Defensive tackle, Black, number 94, 66 snaps. It's a lot of snaps against a powerful, physical Penn State team. So, Iowa's good, not vintage good. They might be a little bit bruised up from last week. Michigan State's offensive line, something to prove. We'll see. Meanwhile, Ethan Boyd had replaced Brown at halftime, I think, of the Washington game. Kind of expected Boyd to start last week. Has not happened. I think Boyd has a higher ceiling than Brown. Does Boyd keep coming, and does he become a good choice there? Keyshawn Blackstock's getting better. His lateral movement pass defense is good, and he's shown a little bit of physicality. He's looking better. Maybe not enough to beat out Baldwin yet, but he's competing there. In the meantime, Vandermark was pretty good, got a little dinged up, didn't play last week. He's been pretty good. Wigginton started his first start Saturday. A couple of wide bodies, I think they're looking pretty good. So Wigginton, Vandermark, Boyd, Blackstock, decent pieces there. I'm not ready to say, as you said, that Kapilovic is a failure, but it's a concern. I think they're behind schedule this year. And they did a little bit better of their part against Maryland. It was turnovers that screwed the whole thing up. In general, I think the offensive line last week probably played well enough to win if you don't turn it over. Not great, not enough to be a difference maker to put a hole in the opposition, but not the unit that you would blame for the loss. Not great, but better than it had been. Question 13, Brian from Flushing, Michigan. He says, is this year's Big Ten Freshman of the Year and Player of the Year wearing green and white this season in college basketball? If so, who will they be? Talking about Michigan State basketball, do they have the Big Ten Player of the Year? Probably not. It's probably going to be Zach Edey. And, Big Ten Player of the Year, Tyson Walker, possibly. He could get in the conversation there. Freshman of the Year, no. No freshman at Michigan State is going to accumulate enough points and statistical prowess to be Freshman of the Year in the Big Ten this year. Question 14, Bleed Green from Greenville, Michigan says, when the new coach comes in, who are the first 4 current coaches you want sent out the door, and who would be 4 coaches, analysts you would like to see remain in the staff next? I don't know much about the support staff. I think Dythorn was an interesting recruiting coordinator that they brought in. I think he's a grinder. I think he's good. But, anybody that comes in from, another staff is going to bring his own recruiting guy, I would think. But I think Dythorn's good. I like him. But I don't know much about the support staff. And don't have really an opinion on the weight training thing either. I don't really know. But in terms of coaches to remain, I would think Courtney Hawkins. I think he's done a good job developing wide receivers. I think he's did a good job helping Keon Coleman. I think he's done a good job evaluating Jerron Glover. Not seen them yet, but I think Isaiah Johnson, Jalen Smith were good evaluations. Courtney Hawkins, in-state guy. A lot of reasons. I think he's respected a lot with this roster. It makes sense that would be a guy that would have a good chance to stay on. If a new coach comes in, what do they have as a running backs coach? I don't know, but Ephraim Reed is good. I think Ephraim Reed is pretty good. I think he would get consideration, but Ephraim Reed would be able to get a job somewhere else also. Young guy, he's going to be fine. But those would be 2 that off the top of my head right now. As for the other ones, they still have their work cut out for them to prove themselves. That's what they're working on right now, and it's going to be difficult. Question 15, Mike from Chicagoland says, are you expecting any current players to opt out for the rest of the season, a la Connor Hayward in 2019? If so, how many regulars do you expect to be missing on Saturday night? This coming Saturday night, if someone had opted out, would we have heard of it by now? Probably, because if a player had opted out, they probably would have mentioned it on social media. I mentioned this list earlier, players that have not redshirted yet. Charles Brantley would be one I'd keep an eye on. I've not heard anything, but that's a guy that went into the portal previously. He's been banged up already. He's played 3 games. Does he come back and play a 4th? Does he shut it down? And then we're almost done here, but we might take a call. Charles Brantley, good player. I'm not trying to put any thoughts in his head, but it wouldn't shock me if that guy shuts it down, preserves red shirt, comes back, transfers somewhere else, or stays, preserves red shirt, comes back next year as a junior. But a lot of these guys think they're NFL players, and they just want to get to the league sooner. So the idea of redshirting and delaying it by a year for some of these guys, even though it might be good for some of them, it's not something that they really are wanting to do. We talked about some of the other ones, some of the other guys who have not redshirted yet, who are playing, Jaden Mangum, Malik Spencer, Terrell Henry, Zion Young, Ma Nateote, hasn't played yet, but Angelo Gross, Ade Willie, Dylan Tatum, Jordan Simmons, Montori Foster. Those are guys that have not redshirted yet and have not transferred. So they would be in that category, but not really, don't really know. I mean, the Connor Hayward thing was a big surprise and ended up being a big part of that 2021 team. All right, let me go over here to the comments and reactions, and we'll shut it down unless we get a phone call. BTC Chris Foulin says, I think Tucker, he just got lazy and unmotivated after being gifted that huge contract and he couldn't stay focused. Instead, he was doing a lot of traveling and freaky things on the payroll. I don't know about all that, but I do think Tucker lost some of that relentlessness. I think the recruiting thing was not as sharp as it had been the first couple of years. There's a guy on our message board that made a good comment. I think his name is Gas Station Coffee is his name. And he made a comment that Tucker was like the dog who caught
Call from
Nils.
He was like the dog. He was like the dog that caught the fire truck, which I think is an interesting analogy. All right, we're going to go out to Houston, Texas, and we have Nils Deco, formerly of the Horn in Austin, Texas. He's no longer a radio personality in the state of Texas, but he was at one time, and he certainly is a personality in Michigan State circles, and we like to bring him in to talk Michigan State sports because he's an astute observer and he's got a big mouth. But Nils, you're on the air now, so keep it clean. And we're almost done. It's 11:30 Eastern time. How are you doing? What do you think? Are you okay? Mel Tucker fired today, you may have heard.
Yeah, it's a bummer, right? Like all the things you dream of, and then it's just, it's a bad situation. I feel bad for all the Spartan fans that are older than me and you, JC, because, they've been through this stuff. My boy Shar, our boy, there's so many people on that board. Green Acres, who was a guy that was on the board from, the beginning, back in the 1995 or 96, a good man. But, I feel bad for all those old-time Spartan fans because, I think a Spartan fan and like a Chicago Cubs fan, we're very similar, right? We're so similar. And that, we have these souls that are like, we're thick-souled people that they're our team, and no matter what, we think every year. I just talked to my best friend, Eric Steinman, he goes, how you doing? Well, we're ready for next year. And he was laughing because he'd always talk smack about, Spartans being next year's team. So it's a bummer.
There have been some good years in there, too, though. There have been some good years in there. Not many teams have had, that run that D'Antonio had in terms of the number of 10-win seasons since 2010, the number of...
Well, that's like the COF teams or like, when, the Cubs were good for 2 or 3 years. But it's frustrating when you get in a situation where you think this guy's got, the opportunity to be the next level coach. You go 11-2. Michigan State has probably the best running back in the country. There's an opportunity. You beat Pittsburgh in the Peach Bowl, and then you're thinking, okay, we can build upon that. And then all of a sudden, next thing you know, they pull the carpet from underneath you, and then Tucker just acts out of line, and next thing you know, you're 2-2, and you're hoping you're not 2-10 in 10 weeks.
Could happen. And Tucker. I was just making this comment, that relentlessness and the vision that he had early on, just kind of, I'm not sure he maintained that. I really don't think he did. And I don't mean to kick a man while he's down, but I just don't know about the organizational inertia that he had originally. There's a guy at Gas Station Coffee on our message board. He made a comment. His analogy was, it was like Tucker is like the dog who caught the fire truck. You chase it, then you catch it. Now what do? He had the big contract. He's got a big rig college football program, and just peed himself.
Well, life is about balance, right? If you think about things like inertia, and life is about balance, and it was out of whack. No one's paying anybody $9.5 million a year. If you think the fact that Tommy Izzo is probably getting, he gets like 6 or 6.2, and he's probably, when it's all said and done, probably the best coach in Michigan State, any sport will ever had. And he's only getting paid that. I don't care if he doesn't, he's not the football coach, but I mean, Michigan State's brand is Tom Izzo. I mean, you ask anybody in the Midwest, like, they don't hate Mel Tucker. Like, Purdue fans, I mean, like, to be that guy, Bobby Knight or Gene Katie or Tom Izzo, like, Tom Izzo is loved out of the Big Ten, right? But all the Big Ten schools that are right there on Michigan State's level, they don't like Tom Izzo. There's a reason, because Tom Izzo's the dude, right? So he gets paid $6.2 million a year to give you a brand that makes you national. You're on the Champions Classic every year, the first or second, Tuesday in November on ESPN. And, you give Michigan State a brand. I don't know what the value is, but, if he's getting $6.2 million, and Tucker, who did it maybe in 4 or 5 months, the tailback they found out of, Memphis, Tennessee, or Antioch, Tennessee, wherever Kenneth Walker's from, who went to Wake Forest. I mean, the stuff's out of line. I mean, and it's sad that it ended up like this. I don't think Tucker's a bad guy. I think, he got himself in a situation where he had too much freedom, no accountability, too much money on his hands and not enough time to do stuff with it. And it's like, and not hiring the kind of people that, could put him over the top, hiring a top-notch OC or top-notch defensive coordinator. What's funny is that, he hires a wide receivers coach by the name of Courtney Hawkins, who I think is probably, if you, pull back the layers and the onions of the deal, I think that guy's as good as there is. And we all know what kind of football player he was at Michigan State, what kind of person he is. Like, he lucked into that dude. I think every year the receivers get better exponentially. I mean, Keon Coleman, coming from Opelousas, Louisiana, was not the receiver he was that he is right now. So, I mean, I think a lot of credit needs to go to Courtney Hawkins. And
helped him.
I think if maybe Coach Tucker was paying attention a little bit more, maybe Keon Coleman's a Michigan State Spartan. And I understand that nobody, we're not going to rehash stuff, but, it's sad that Michigan State Spartan fans, it breaks my heart because, I mean, you get 12 weekends or 13 weekends a year to be a college football fan. And when stuff like this happens after the second week, you're kind of broken. And that's how I am right now. I'm kind of broken. All of a sudden I'm cheering for the Lions. I have a friend that's going to the game tomorrow who's from, he's a Michigan fan, but he's a Lions fan. So I'm like, okay, I'll jump on the bandwagon because you're my buddy. And I want all my Lions buddies to, be happy. It's like, I talk to you every once in a while and you're kind of thinking like you're watching out of the twinkle of your eye. You're like, man, can I do it? Can Jim Comparoni be a Lions fan? Can I take Alex to go to see Ford Field and maybe they're 10-4 come, middle of December, all of a sudden they're making the playoffs because you don't trust them. I mean, trusting the Lions is like, I don't know, like trusting the Cleveland Indians or something, the Cleveland Guardians, whatever they're called. But, it's just, football is a different sport because you only have 12 or 13 weekends with this team, and once they lose, they do something dumb, and their football coach does something dumb like Michigan State's had. You're like, okay, what do I do the rest of the 9 or 10 weeks? I mean, I can only do so much. I can only wait till November 6th to watch or October 29th to watch Michigan State play Tennessee in an exhibition basketball game. You know what I mean? It's just like there's not enough games to overcome the sadness of being a Michigan State football fan this year.
Is there any consolation hoping? I talked about this scenario earlier. Michigan State gets to 6-6, maybe 7-5 if they beat Iowa somehow. And
how are we going to do that? I mean, how are you going to do that?
Very difficult.
I just think, you get beat 31-9, and you're better than the team last Saturday, and you're at home. And I understand there's lots of stuff, but Michigan State was the better team last Saturday.
I agree. That was the strangest 31-9 game.
I thought the defense was better.
Yeah.
I think the whole operation was better, right? Now,
good.
Your best linebacker's hurt. You can't keep your defensive linemen, healthy. I mean, I just thought, and then,
they played good defense. They played good defense against a problematic Maryland offense. They played pretty good defense. They really did. Maryland.
Well, the good thing is Luke Lachey is out, so yeah. I don't know how. I mean, whoever scores 9 points is going to win this game on Saturday night.
9-7.
On
9-6.
9-6. But the thing about Michigan State, though, last game, if Michigan State doesn't go for the touchdown, they score the field goal, it would have been a 14-3, right?
Yeah.
And the Ethan Boyd got blown up on the kick before halftime. So let's say it's 21-9. I mean, Michigan State, there are opportunities. I think Michigan State needs to make sure they got a backup running back because Berger or Mangum, because Nathan Carter's really good.
Yeah.
But, another game where if he has to play Iowa and he has to carry the ball 20 times,
yeah,
he'll be done for the year because they hit you and they hit you and they hit you.
Yeah, they do. And I mean, I don't know. I don't expect Mangum to be back soon. Berger's not going
What's
to be
wrong with
back.
Mangum? What's wrong with What's wrong with Mangum?
It's like a lower body situation going on. So Berger's
Man,
and Berger's out.
I thought he was tougher than that. And I thought he was tougher than that.
Well, sometimes you
It's kind of sad someone's dad who's from Holland, Michigan. You think he'd be tougher than that.
Oh, he's tough. Come on. Sometimes
Just kidding.
sometimes you cut a tire, you know. So I mean,
I know, but I just,
and you know, and what's interesting is, did anybody get any tailback carries last week besides Carter? I mean, Prim
Simmons,
didn't.
I think, might have gotten one.
Simmons might have gotten one. Prim, you know, he hasn't been on the field since that fumbled. I'm not saying he's good or the savior, but I mean, I don't know who they have there after that. And linebackers, I talked about this earlier. You know, if Windman's not able to play, and they'll play a lot of 4-3 this weekend.
I thought he was done for the year, according to some people. I thought he tore his pec and he's done.
Probably. It's not official yet, but I'm not expecting him. I'm just going week by week. I'm not expecting him to play this week. I can't confirm that that's the situation with that injury, but not expecting him to play.
I thought the rule was with all this gambling going on with the Iowa program that they have to know who's getting to play, so Iowa players and Iowa State players know who to gamble on.
Exactly. And that'll come out.
I mean, really, you think about it, right? I mean, half Iowa and Iowa State players, I mean, they're on the take, right?
Chucky Houston posts here, and he says, if Michigan State football wants to win and win now, they will go out and get Urban Meyer. It's all about winning, and he's a proven winner. Nils, what do you think about that?
Do you want me to go there?
If you want.
I mean, I think that's the only thing we got. I mean, okay, so dude, so we have, I mean, where do we come to be so sanctimonious? Like our football coaches have to be sane. I mean, I'm not getting political, but we have a guy that's running for the Republican nomination that has 91 indictments. So I'm just like, why is Urban Meyer I mean, I understand he's not a perfect being, right? But, you know, what are we looking for?
Maybe he should run for president.
I mean, I don't understand, like, why are we so worried about what this football coach did in a bar? I mean, like, I don't understand it. Like, we're all flawed, right? We're all flawed human beings, right?
Yes.
You're probably the most flawed person ever on your message board. So I'm like, why are we worried about what he did? Like, when we were growing up, if they knew what we did or I did, I'd be in jail still to this day. But I'm like, you have this stuff. People have phones. They have iPhones. They have Instagram. Like, you know, I was watching Studio 54 last night on Netflix. Go watch it. And you're like, okay, if all those people that were in there were on, you know, in today's society, they wouldn't have jobs. Like Urban Meyer is a flawed character, right? He's probably one of the top 5 football coaches in the last probably 20 years, right? It's Saban, him, Kirby Smart, and then we'll put there. But Urban Meyer can coach football from Ashtabula, Ohio. He has all the metrics, and he wanted to be a Spartan football coach at one time in 2003. But Ron Mason thought he was just going to use Michigan State as a springboard, right, to take to the next level, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's been at Notre Dame. He's been at Ohio State. He cheated. What year was the year that they got beat 42-37? They had to flip the blackboard or had to flip the board.
2014.
Ohio State had our signal.
2014 at Spartan Stadium. They flipped the bench at the 2013 Big Ten championship game.
Exactly. So, I mean, there's respect there. I mean, I just think people undervalue Michigan State. I think, you know, I think you undervalue Michigan State in terms of what Michigan State can be. Yeah. If you're going to go all in and say, okay, we're going to bring in UCLA, USC, Oregon, and Washington in the Big Ten, and you want to pick a coach that's probably not as good as any of those coaches, how are you going to compete? I mean, I think sometimes you just got to say, you know, what the heck? And, you know, I mean, Urban Meyer, I don't know why you would be opposed to him. We're not trying. I don't understand what people are looking for. Like, everyone, they live in these perches, and, like, we're all flawed. Like, what could Urban Meyer do that would hurt Michigan State that Michigan State hasn't already done? I mean, you got Nassar, and now you got Tucker. You can't do any worse than what Michigan State's done, right? Can you?
No. I mean, in some ways, I think the Baylor situation was worse. I mean, Nasser, that was bad, really bad. Not a lot of that took place
But only
on
8
Michigan
of those
State's.
girls were Michigan State girls.
They
Michigan State
yeah.
got themselves in a situation where
That
they
took place.
didn't.
Most of that took place,
Down here north of Houston, where Bella Croy and they have their farm, just north of Houston in the Huntsville area. And that's where all that U.S. Olympic stuff so Michigan State took the fall because, once again, their PR firm is not good. Just like this whole deal with Tucker, right? All the stuff should have been done, buttoned up, move on down the road, right? He shouldn't have been the coach. He should have taken an FMLA and said he's got some sickness. We'll pay you. He can't coach this year. And Michigan State would have had a better transition. But the powers that be decided, they want to make, Tucker wants his $79 million that he probably doesn't deserve. It just, we're blessed that Judd Heathcote and Gus Kanakis got along, and that Judd Heathcote gave a job to Tom Izzo, and that Tom Izzo is a good man to Gus Kanakis, because we're fortunate. And then also, like you always say, the greatest thing that ever happened to Michigan State University is what, Jim Comparoni?
Besides John Hanna?
No, that Magic Johnson was born 5 miles from Canton.
That's a natural resource.
The number one natural resource that ever lived.
Helped.
So, I mean, I just, I'm a bigger, I just think, I just don't understand why you'd say, Urban Meyer can't be our football coach. That's like, if he wants $7 million, I'll give him $7 million. And I know that he wants the job because he's got that itch.
You sure?
And he knows he can go there and he can win a third national championship at a different school. Has anyone ever done that?
No.
So the only thing he can do really right now is win a national championship at Florida, Ohio State, and be Michigan State. He would go down right there with Saban as being the best football coach ever, and he would trump Saban because of the fact he did it at Michigan State. So Michigan State has this caveat, right, that the best football coach ever lived, what 34-26 at Michigan State?
Yeah. Nick Saban. Yeah.
So
if let's play theoreticals. If the Nasser thing had never happened, would Michigan State, would it be easier for Michigan State to just hire Urban Meyer and not worry about what people say?
I don't think people have that. I don't think people care, Jim. I think you have this Detroit media in Michigan State is so enamored with these people that think stuff really matters. It doesn't matter. We live in a 3-4 week news cycle. When it's all said and done, no one's going to remember or care about it. We revisit it because Michigan State's allowed ESPN and all these people to revisit it. But you know what? It really doesn't matter. It's what applications, Michigan State's academic reputation is going up every year, right? Has it gone down since all this stuff happened?
No.
Okay, it's not going to go down. And the dorms are not as good as Grand Valley State or Saginaw Valley State. That doesn't matter. Michigan State is a Big Ten university with a 76,000-seat football stadium with a basketball coach that's probably one of the top 6 or 7 that ever lived. It's a pretty good place to go to college. It's a pretty good place to have an experience. Like, we don't give it enough credit. Yes, it has warts. We all have warts. But Michigan State is
Michigan State has had a small handful of people out of 60,000 people that roam the campus, including faculty and students. It's had a small handful of people, like 3, that have created this stigma. It's the other 57,997 have been pretty good year after year.
I mean,
I'm
if I'm Michigan
non-committal.
State, I'm going all in on Urban Meyer. I'm saying with USC, UCLA, Oregon, and Washington coming to the Big Ten next year, I'm saying, you know what? We got one chance at this. We got to go big, or we can go be like Minnesota, or who are you gonna be? Michigan State. You're gonna be Minnesota, Purdue, Indiana. Who do you want to be?
Changing gears.
9-3 in the Big Ten. Going forward next year, you go 9-3 in the Big Ten. What are you in?
Playoff.
You're in the college football playoff.
I can be talked into it. What are your thoughts about Mike Elko? If you're Michigan State, do you want him? If he beats Notre Dame and Jimbo Fisher gets in more thin ice, if he beats Notre Dame and goes 10-2, I think he may pass on Michigan State and wait for something better to come along, whether it's this year or next year.
I mean, you got to figure out what. I mean, Mike Elko. I mean, you forget though. Texas is. Do you want to go to A&M or do you want to go to Michigan State? So they're almost polar school. I mean, they're both parallel schools, right?
Well, A&M's is more comfortable paying more, and you'll have more access to
They might
talent.
be paying more, but I mean, you'll be out of there in 2 years because you're gonna be 6-6. You're not. I mean, Texas and OU are coming in. You're part of the conference, and you're not beating them. I mean, Texas is lined up right now. I mean, like all of a sudden, they're as talented. I don't know if you watch them, but they're as talented as they've been in probably 15 years, and it's only going to get better. There's 375 dudes down here. They're recruiting nationally. Texas, they got quarterback. I mean, Arch Manning came to the field. He's probably the number one recruit. I mean, they got dudes. Like A&M, I mean, Brad Pashenko, our boy EGR, and he loves his Aggies because I don't even know why. But, the Aggies, they won one national title since 1939. They screwed up Johnny Manziel. They just, if they were in Detroit and they were like the equivalent of Michigan State, they would just, people will realize, like, they're so backwards.
But A&M has such potential. They've always had this great potential.
Yeah, but I mean, there's backwards. There's too far right way.
And Elko's been there, and he's
been there, but I mean,
so he can visualize it. He can.
Dude.
True.
In Texas, you want offense. You can't. They're not hiring a defensive coach. They haven't hired a defensive coach since R.C. Slocum, and that probably ain't happening again.
Yeah, he wasn't that great. All right, Nils.
No, I mean, I apologize if I upset anybody, but Urban Meyer is my pick to click. And if anybody else, like Brian Stevenson or my boy EGR, are upset, I understand.
What do you think about Bill O'Brien?
I mean, I'll take him. That's a great pick. He's a good football coach. He's in a horrible situation and stabilized it.
At Penn State?
Yes, and he's a hell of a football coach.
Belichick hired him twice. The last time Michigan State hired a Belichick coordinator turned out okay.
Ask Bryce Young what he thinks, though. He won a Heisman Trophy.
And would he be open to going back to college and running his own organization? I mean, he went back to Alabama for a reason, didn't he? He didn't go there to be coordinator because he didn't enjoy college, right?
No, I mean, that's how the step was. I mean, you go back, work for Saban for 2 years. I mean, he could have gone, he was supposed to go, Belichick wanted him after year one, but Saban told Belichick, he goes, I need 2 years with him. So he had 2 years, and now they got Tommy Rees. I mean, that was how it was set up between Belichick and Saban, right? He was supposed to go back after year one, and that's why the Patriots were so bad last year, because that's why they put your former Detroit Lions coach, what's his name, Patricia, as offensive coordinator, because that was just a stopgap, because Belichick wanted O'Brien back that year, but Saban said, I need him for 2 years.
Why did he get fired? Why did he get fired after 4 years with Houston? I mean, he went 0-4. He won 4 division championships, and then he went 0-4 to begin that 1 year.
But he's got the McNairs and the fact that the Houston Texans are the most bungled franchise ever. So here's my thinking, right? And I've asked this thousands of times when I moved here in Houston in 2002. I'm like, okay, why do the Browns go to Baltimore, but they get the team name back, right?
Yeah.
The Houston Oilers go to Tennessee.
Yeah.
But they have to have the Texans. Like we grew up, we're very similar in age. When we were growing up, late 70s, the Houston Oilers had the coolest uniforms, the best song, Love You Blue, and the best running back, right? And you had Earl Campbell running down the sideline with, Howard Cosell, I think he ran for 197 or 195 on Monday Night Football. You remember that game?
Against Delvin Williams and the Miami Dolphins. Adger Armstrong, 100%. Fullback, Dan Pastorini, Ken Burrow.
Yeah, exactly.
Great team. Yeah,
right?
So why did the Texans, they couldn't use Houston Oilers?
Yeah, they won't give it. I'm like,
who wouldn't? Tennessee wouldn't give it out?
Yeah, Bud Adams and his family, the Amy Adams Trust, Bud Adams Trust, they won't give the name back. I mean, you're talking about a helmet that's as good as there is. Yeah. There's not a better helmet.
Right. Yeah, that's wrong. I didn't know all that. That's wrong.
But
wrong.
don't know where we're going with this. But
Why did he get fired? I guess it doesn't really matter why he got fired at 0-4. No big deal. He had
so
success in the
he was
NFL.
the GM. He was the GM and the head coach. He wasn't ready to be both. He was bad in personnel. Rick Smith was like the GM as well, and he made some bad, they made some bad decisions.
And then Bill O'Brien went to Alabama to be offensive coordinator. And like I said, you don't go back to college unless you've got it in the back of your head that you might want to stay in college. Some part of you. Am I wrong?
I mean, I'm in agreement. I just think, how many coaches go into Michigan State Stadium and say this place is garbage? It's not. They don't think that. They think, this is a pretty amazing place. There's 76,000. Like, how many stadiums in the top 25? Like, you did a great analysis on that thing you put together last week. But the next step is go rank the stadiums, right? And go rank them in 1 to 25. And, Michigan State Stadium is right there, probably in the top 15.
Yeah, it's
when you
probably
think about it. A visiting coach 20. Is not going to say, I can't win in the stadium. You know what I mean?
Right. And let's see. MSU football schedule 2013. Hold on a second.
Nebraska Stadium's always impressive, right?
Oh, yeah, it's great. Great. Play him that year. Hold on, I'm looking something up. MSU football schedule 2012. They didn't play Penn State in 2013. Hold on. In 2012, they were not very good. The 2 years that Bill O'Brien was at Penn State, they did not play Michigan State. So I was kind of wondering, I was just looking it up to see whether or not when he was head coach at Penn State, if he got a chance to go and coach at Spartan Stadium at a time when it was lit. And he did not. Penn State was off the schedule at that time. So he's never been to Spartan Stadium as a coach. Now he would, I'm sure he and Saban could talk about it. And Saban talks up Michigan State when he can. So, for what that's worth. That's an interesting one. That's one to have out there. That's one that you call and you look into it. I think you called Kalen DeBoer just to make sure that he doesn't have an itch to leave and just to make sure Washington can match what Michigan State could throw at him because he's terrific. Other than that, you got Elko there. Then after that, you're looking at Dickert a little bit, although, the style of defense there, Mubi was on, and he's not really loving the way Oregon State and Washington State played defense. So
I don't think we have enough information. Michigan State doesn't have enough information on guys like that. Michigan State's done that. I mean, John L. Smith is a Western, Washington State kind of guy. I think you have to be between the Mississippi River and the Ohio River Valley. I just think you have to understand how to recruit north to south that way. And then you can get yourself another opportunities like Texas, Georgia, Florida, and pick, maybe get 9 kids out of those 3 states. And then you work your, but with the portal, I think things change. I think Urban Meyer, he would turn the roster over in, a matter of 7 seconds. I think Bill O'Brien would do the same thing. I think that changes a lot of the narratives that you don't really have to worry about what happens over the next, 60 days. You're going to find a roster that says, I want to play right away. I want to play at Michigan State. Here's an opportunity for me. It's much like what Deion's done at Colorado. And I think Michigan State's roster is much better. I think there's a lot of good receivers. I think there's some good offensive linemen. I don't know about the defensive line. I think Michigan State will be in trouble there. But, there's players there. But, you have to figure out your NIL like you always talk.
Yeah, if they keep them. They have to get NIL straightened out. Looks like there's progress there. Have to keep the roster.
Michigan State's like a place where kids, if you think about all the people that come back, like, it's not like being in Starkville, Mississippi, or, it is a good place to go to college. Everyone comes back. I'm friends with Eugene Berg, right, who's a receiver in the late 70s at Michigan State, right, with Kirk Gibson. And he's like, dude, I go back there every year, and that's my place. From East St. Louis, Illinois. He's like, Nils, you understand, that's my spot. I go back there, and I feel like I did in 1978.
Yeah. I live here, and I feel that way.
Exactly. You've been on vacation. You've never even had to work a day in your life. Think about how you act. You've been on vacation since 1993, working for, Spartan Mag and the staffers. Your life is about as good as it gets. we didn't go there, but I mean, yeah.
A lot of all
Now
nighters
your
though.
son's a freshman.
All nighters though. I mean, you've seen me working at 6 a.m. You've seen it.
Well, that's what you're born to do, dude. You were born to do that.
All right,
You
we're
were
gonna wrap
born
it
to do
up.
that.
We're gonna wrap it up, Nils. It's midnight Eastern time. People need to go. They need to go to work and go to bed. I appreciate you calling in and offering that side of the argument. A lot of people agree with you, so thanks a lot, Nils. You have a lot of astute observations. We appreciate it.
We don't know about astute, but you're the best, JC. I appreciate you.
All right, man. There goes Nils. We
See you
appreciate
later.
it. All right, we'll see you later. All right, everybody. Be good, behave, be good people, help one another, and be good people. That's the theme tonight. And thanks for checking in. And, hey, give us a like, subscribe to the channel, go to SpartanMag.com, become a SpartanMag.com subscriber. We need you over there. We need subscribers. It's fun. Got a coaching search coming up in the coming weeks. We're going to be covering it like nobody else. We plan to. And we have fun doing it. So SpartanMag.com, check it out. We appreciate everybody checking in and all the posts and all the contributions. And we will see you next time on Spartan Mag Live. We'll be covering Michigan State versus Iowa from Kinnick Stadium coming up this weekend. Conan Dyke and myself will be there. And go to SpartanMag.com for all the coverage. Appreciate you. Have a good day, good week, good weekend. Take care, everybody.